An update: 1 year later, I'm rethinking having kids with my wife after what I discovered about her father. Am I the asshole? Original post. My wife Jessica, 32F, and I, 30M, have been married for 2 years and are trying for a baby. Jessica has an older sister, Mary, that she isn't close to. She told me that they had a huge falling out over some family drama and just don't speak anymore. I asked a few times about the entire situation, but she would say she doesn't like talking about it and doesn't think it's important. It was Jessica's brother's birthday yesterday and we were all over at his house to celebrate. Mary made an appearance and there was a lot of drama. Long story short, she called Jessica and her brothers out for still associating with their dad when they know that he is a child molester. No one was paying her any mind and I was really confused on what the hell was going on. When Mary left and Jessica and I went home, I asked Jessica what the hell happened. She said that when they were kids, Mary used to claim that their dad used to molest her. I asked if it's true and Jessica was stuttering a lot. She said she knows her dad used to do bad things but that Mary cut them all off when she turned 18 and moved out. I asked if she is admitting that she knows her dad was a child molester and did things to his own daughter. She said he doesn't do it anymore and he was just in a really bad place in his life and he apologized to Mary, so there's nothing else anyone can do for Mary. I was honestly appalled. I also feel so terrible for Mary. Jessica made it seem like Mary did something wrong and deserved to be basically exiled from the family. I could have never imagined that this is what happened. I asked if she expects me to now be willing to have that man around our future children and she started shouting at me, saying I'm judging him off something that happened 2 decades ago and whether I like it or not, he is going to be our child's grandpa and he will be in their lives. I said if she insists on it, I think we need to hold off on having kids and have serious conversations about it. She's extremely angry at me but I don't know how I could better react, to be honest. This feels like a huge deal that she is minimizing. AITA, relevant comments. Commenter, NTA and run. Please talk to someone from RAIN. They are an organization for victims of sexual assault. This is not something minor like occasionally being crabby with your kids on the mornings you have a migraine. This is a crime. I know a victim of child sexual abuse and many years later and thousands of dollars in therapy, this woman is still hurting. You need to get out now. OOP. I wish I could accurately describe how Mary looked and sounded when she was going off on her siblings that day. It actually sent shivers down my spine. She looked so angry but so defeated at the same time. All while they were all looking at her like she was crazy. I still can't wrap my head around it. I want to reach out to her and check if she's alright, but I don't know how appropriate that will be. Commenter, NTA, someone who has glossed over child molestation. Would she want to leave a future child of yours with grandpa for the night? That's chilling. And once you have kids, even if you divorced her for this later, you couldn't get full custody over this, if grandpa never went to prison for it and isn't a convicted sex offender. It's awful all the way around. I can't believe you've been married 2 years before you even hear this story. OP, that's exactly what I was thinking. He never went to prison. Never been reported to the police at all, and there's no proof of what he did, so I would have no case and no power to keep him away from our children. I don't want to feel helpless in what happens to my children. I don't want to fail them like that. I don't think I should even have them with her at any point now that this has all come to light. Commenter, and I bet she did everything she could to hide this from him their whole relationship. OOP, I think this is a huge part of why I'm so angry at her. She had so many opportunities to tell me. There are instances where she had to have actively gone out of her way to keep this entire thing from me. And if Mary hadn't shown up to their brother's birthday party, I would have still been in the dark. Top comment, NTA pedophiles rarely retire. There is no consensus bot on AITA, but top comments were NTA. This is still one of the most popular posts of all time on the AITA sub-update post. It's been nearly a year since my initial post, so I thought I would give an update. A few days after my original post, I sat Jessica down and told her how I was feeling. I told her I'm not okay with what she and her family had done to Mary. They knew what their dad had done to her but still chose to take his side and make Mary look crazy. I told her I'm also not okay with brushing her father's crimes under the rug. She was quiet and didn't say anything. She didn't try to defend herself or her family. She was just staring at me in a very chilling way. Almost like she was indifferent to whatever I had to say and just wanted it to be over. I told her I needed time to myself and I would leave and think about what I wanted to do. Suddenly she was paying attention. She seemed shocked and panicked. She started begging me not to leave, saying I'll get over it in a few days when we get back to how we usually are and things settle down. She said all families have skeletons in their closet and that this can't define our marriage. I said no and I left the house for a few days. I ignored all her calls and those of her family. I reached out to Mary on Facebook. I wrote her a lengthy message about how I had no idea all she had been through, and that I'm so sorry for how her family treated her. I told her to reach out to me if she ever needs anything. She got back to me and asked if we could meet for coffee. We met up the day after. At first it was small talk, then she asked if I would be okay if she told me her version of events. I said of course I would, and she spoke to me about it. Everything her dad did and how her family treated her after she told them. I felt physically sick. She even told me stories about how Jessica told her friends that Mary has a mental condition that causes hallucinations, and that just in case Mary starts rumors about their family, that's why. A lot of people still believe Mary has a mental condition because of Jessica. I knew after that talk that I had to end things with Jessica. I went over to our house and told her I want a divorce. I told her I cannot stand the thought of being her husband and a part of their disgusting family. All she did was cry and ask all this for her. I knew then that she hadn't changed. She was still the same person that did all of those things to Mary, and she was still doing them. We're still not officially divorced, but we haven't been together since, and we are going through the process. It's just taking longer than I thought to get it finalized. Mary and I became friends. I invited her to a birthday dinner my family were hosting for me, and she hit it off with my cousin. He's crazy about her, and she seems really happy with him too. He keeps asking me if it would be too early to propose, and I have to tell him to not scare her away lol. But they have a really wholesome relationship and I'm really happy for them. As for me, I'm just surviving. Divorces are tough, but I know I made the right choice. Thank you to everyone that responded and gave me advice, I really appreciate it. Relevant comments. Comment 1, WTF, did I read now? Do all families have skeletons? This is not a skeleton, this is a whole cemetery. Reply, family skeletons are usually benign, trivial, even banal, at least in my family they are. This is a full-on family conspiracy to make Mary look like she's lost her mind while shielding a pedophile. Fuck yeah. OOP made the right call to walk away from this mess. Mine aren't benign, but they're either just weird or alcoholism, drug abuse, untreated mental illness, etc. Like, the normal amount of fucked up. Or, maybe a little more but like, not defending a pedophile. More just, sympathy for addicts. Comment 2, all she did was cry and ask, all this for her. The fact she has an issue with Mary but not her father being a pedophile just shows that this lady is a piece of trash. She can seriously fuck off. Comment 3, either that, or be all shocked about it. Like, who could have predicted such an unexpected outcome? How could she have possibly known this would happen? Comment 4, I'm disgusted to be in the same asylum as her. Sign my petition to have Jessica reclassified as a segmented worm. My best friend made a move on my husband while I was away with my family. He pushed her away, but now I don't know what to do next. Original post, I think this is the right sub, but if not, I'm sorry. I can't think straight right now. We, 37F39M, have been together for 15 years, married for 12, and we have 4 kids. We've always had a wonderful loving relationship and have both been amazing partners to each other. My mom is not doing well health-wise and I flew out to her with our youngest on Friday morning and we will be flying back tomorrow night. A few hours ago my best friend called me crying and said that she got into a major fight with her husband after she found he cheated and asked if she could come over. She had forgotten that I wasn't in town and I talked to her for a little while and tried to calm her down. I also called my husband explaining the situation and asked if it was okay for my best friend to spend the night in our guest room and he was fine with it. I took our iPad with me to keep our youngest entertained while at my parents' place. It is logged into my husband's Apple ID email so his messages and calls show up on it. When I went to put it on charge I saw tens of messages from my best friend to my husband. I found it strange since they were supposed to be under the same roof and I knew it was wrong to snoop, but I ended up reading the messages anyway. Long story short, something happened between them, my husband kicked her out and my best friend wants to keep whatever it is a secret, but my husband says that I deserve to know. I don't know what to do or think now and I have no one I can talk to about this. What am I supposed to do now? Relevant comments. Comment 1, at least he wants to tell you about it. You should call him and ask him what it is that you deserve to know. It might just be that she made a move on him and he got mad and kicked her out, but contact him now. Comment 2, same. She's just been cheated on and she likely wanted revenge, but in her distress, she picked the nearest man to her, just made more of a mess of her life. Completely valid reason to cut her out. Also, if OP values the friendship, she has room to be understanding without looking foolish since her husband is loyal. She 100% owes him a huge high five. I would personally understand and forgive, but keep her at arm's length for years, if not forever. Just because I understand doesn't mean I'm going to give you access to my personal life again. About the husband, yes, loyalty is expected and mandatory. No, that doesn't mean that most people wouldn't take low-hanging fruit if offered. He isn't like most. That itself deserves acknowledgement since you saw it in practice before your eyes. Having verifiable proof your partner won't play you even if they reasonably could get away with it is worthy of celebration. Not necessarily because he deserves a treat, but because you now know you are truly safe with your back turned. If he kissed her or SM'd Heath, then he can go get fucked though. Update. You guys were right. I wanted to have the conversation face to face and waited till I got back a few hours ago. We talked after we had dinner and all the kids went to bed. After my now former friend showered and freshened up, my husband gave her leftovers from dinner and they talked about her husband and the situation with her husband, and out of nowhere she tried to sit in his lap and tried kissing him, and my husband pushed her off and she tried again and told her that she had to leave. My husband admitted that he was tempted to call me late last night but didn't want to add more to my plate while I was with my mom and wanted to physically be there when he told me. I have talked to her since and she is back at her place and her husband is not there. She has been very apologetic and is saying that she wasn't in the right headspace and made a mistake trying something with my husband and is begging me to not break apart our friendship. To be honest, I feel bad for her, but she knows how much I love my husband and my family and she was willing to ruin everything, and I can't forgive that or rationalize it. My wife cheated with her gym trainer and demanded half of everything during our divorce, but my father secretly controlled our house and savings. Though here I am, I never imagined I would be publishing. Currently 35 years old, I have worked for a local company for about 10 years. I suppose I'm able to remain cool through all of this as I've always been a somewhat pragmatic man, level-headed and all that. Still, I wed Kathy, a 33-year-old. Although we have been married for 2, we have been together for almost 5. No children. Looking back today, this is most likely a benefit. Kathy has not worked since we were married. Originally in marketing, she wanted to take a break and concentrate on us once we tied the knot. I figured it was temporary and didn't mind. I made plenty for both of us. Our dwelling is modest yet enough to be comfortable. Our savings account is respectable. Nothing ostensive. Kathy had stayed at home most of her life, but suddenly things started to change. Though I can't say exactly when I first observed Kathy being aloof. When she went to the gym or with friends, she would stay out longer. She would get defensive when I inquired what was going on and stopped being loving. I first attributed it to stress or a normal marital slump, but as the weeks passed I couldn't get rid of the uneasy feeling. And so, lad, was I right. One evening Kathy was in the bathroom when her phone buzzed with a message. I looked over at it out of pure instinct. From a guy called Derek. It was. At first I didn't give it much thought, but something about the phrasing of the message felt strange. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, babe," it said. Opening it let me discover what confirmed my greatest worries. For months, she had been seeing Derek, her gym teacher. The books were unambiguous, full of future plans that obviously did not call for me. Frozen, I sat there fixed on the phone. It surprised me. The woman I married and the person I trusted was cheating on me. Still, I felt numb rather than angry or depressed. I knew I had to face her without losing my calm, maybe the shock or maybe my pragmatic nature kicking in. I gently handed her the phone when she emerged from the toilet and asked her to explain. She first tried to reject it, claiming it was only a joke and nothing. She understood, though, that lying had no purpose when I read some of the books back to her. She murmured, "I want a divorce." Not even guilt, an apology, or regret. Nothing. Simply a chilly, distant remark. She said she had been seeing Derek for some time and that she was unhappy in our marriage now. She was leaving me for him. She paid no attention to sugarcoating it. Her next action, though, truly set off something. She began discussing splitting assets without pausing. She claimed she wanted half of everything. The house, the funds, everything we had created together. She even said she earned it as she gave her career to help me. The nerve astonished me. Still, I kept cool. Perhaps it's because I had already emotionally checked out at that point, or perhaps because deep down I knew something she didn't. I agreed then. I assured her I wouldn't fight her for a divorce if she wanted one. She could have half what she believed I possessed. She was shocked, most likely anticipating an emotional collapse or argument. I was not about to provide her with that gratification, though. Almost all of our assets were in my dad's name, something Kathy did not know. And something I felt not necessary to share with her. You know, my father is really astute. He advised me to name all of my key assets in his name years ago when I first began earning good income. Whether it be debt, lawsuits, or, as it turns out, a cheating partner, he said it would provide a safety net should something ever go wrong in the future. I didn't give it much thought at the time. It appeared only like wise financial planning. So I knew Kathy wouldn't be receiving what she expected when she insisted on half of everything. On paper, I had little, just a modest bank account, a car in my name, and a few miscellaneous oddities and ends. The house. In technical terms, it belonged to my dad. Most of my savings are here. Also is under my dad's supervision in accounting. I advised us to handle things through mediation instead than engaging in a messy legal fight. For both of us, I reasoned it would be simpler and less expensive. She accepted, obviously intending to leave with a substantial portion of my assets. She had no idea, though, that this arrangement with my dad had been in place for years and that, to be honest, I had ignored it until the divorce discussion started. Though I can't deny that I'm appreciative of my father's foresight, it wasn't quite what I had hoped for. Most of the funds and investments Kathy was looking at were officially owned by him, as was our property. Living modestly enough that nobody, including Kathy, really questioned it, I had always maintained a low financial profile in my own name. I told my dad right when the divorce process began. Though he was not happy about the circumstances, what father would be, he realized the need of keeping things quiet. We asked a lawyer simply to be sure everything was legally sound and perfect. As it happened, everything was in perfect order. Though Kathy could demand whatever she wanted, there wasn't much in my name for her to take. Kathy moved quickly. She never wasted time. She engaged an aggressive divorce lawyer, one of those sharks that guarantees to grab whatever they can. I also engaged a low-key but reputable attorney who specialized in instances similar to mine where complex financial variables were at work. Though I didn't want to create a major scene out of this, I also wasn't going to allow Kathy and her attorney to harass me. Asset disclosure, the first phase of the divorce procedure, did not go as Kathy had hoped. I set everything out exactly as mandated by law. Her lawyer's assured smile wavered though, as she realized how little my name really registered. Though I could tell they were both perplexed, perhaps even suspicious, there was not much they could do about it. I gave honest information. There were no hidden assets. She then began berating me right there, calling me names and accusing me of lying. Like I stated though, I offered everything I had. Saying we would talk about everything once she had cooled down, I departed following many accusations and shouted shouts. Here I am now, looking at Reddit since I'm not sure if I handled things the correct manner. So Reddit, am I the *bleep* for consenting to give her half of what's mine knowing she's not really getting anywhere near what she expects? Update 1. So, things are beginning to heat up. Kathy was totally incredulous following the first asset revelation. Her attorney was not much better, and she obviously felt I was hiding something. When they saw the meager statistics on paper, he had a wonderful expression. They soon began asking for a more extensive probe. Kathy persisted in questioning where all the money was, the property, the investments, the presumed savings we had. It astounded her that, following years of marriage, there was less to divide. Thinking I had stowed money in secret accounts, her lawyer hired a forensic accountant right once to probe further. I was first a bit anxious, not because I had anything to hide but more because I knew this would simply slow down the entire process. After reviewing everything once more and consulting my attorney though, I discovered there was nothing legally they could uncover. Every item I had said was exactly factual and no trace would lead them to the assets under my dad's name. Kathy's face started to show irritation as the probe dragged on. She was used to getting her wants, but this time there was nothing for her to grab. She seemed unable to understand the reality that she was leaving with next to nothing. Kathy's next action was to try to defend her major contribution to our way of life and my job. She said that by keeping home and running the house, she had helped me to concentrate on my profession and forward my career. Although I'll say that occasionally having her handle things at home was beneficial, it wasn't as if I were operating a Fortune 500 firm. Being a mid-level accountant, my employment has been somewhat steady for years now. She could not point to any dramatic increase in my income that she could declare, *I helped him get there*. She still made an effort though. Though the truth is she hadn't worked long before deciding she wanted to remain home, she pushed the notion that she had sacrificed her own career in marketing to support me. Not anything I ever requested of her. She made this decision even then. Her attorney brought this up often, trying to present me as someone who had profited from her sacrifice, but once more, there was not much evidence to back that assertion. They even tried once to include my parents in the process. Kathy intended to show that I had been hiding assets with their help or that they had been paying me money under the table. I became quite enraged with this section. My parents had nothing to do with this. Pulling them into it was a cheap blow. Luckily, my attorney was able to stop those efforts really rapidly, although Kathy was obviously becoming rather desperate. Kathy chose to handle things on her own as the divorce processes dragged on. She was going to attempt and damage my name in other ways if she cannot get what she wanted via the courts. She began confiding in everyone in our social circle that I had been financially abusive during our marriage and had been keeping money from her. The lies she was disseminating really astounded me. Mutual friends would tell me about how she was doing and about how I was leaving her with nothing. How I had coerced her into believing we had more than we had. She even went on social media, leaving cryptic yet critical remarks on betrayed narcissistic partners. Of course, some people supported her. There are always those who would side with the person who appears to have been wronged. But most of our closer pals were aware of it. They knew I was not the kind to act in such a manner. Seeing her try to damage my reputation just because things weren't working out annoyed me, but I tried not to let it get to me. I knew the truth. The individuals who truly counted knew it too. Apart from that, I had more important things to concentrate on, such as ensuring she didn't take me for more than what was fair. Kathy was working on a smear campaign, and I was ensuring all my bases were addressed. My attorney and I were in close contact to ensure we possessed all the data required to support my side of the narrative. Every contact I had with Kathy, every demand she made, and every time she tried to cast me as the bad guy I recorded. Having such documentation would be absolutely vital, I realized, should this ever make it before court. I began also compiling proof of her romance with Derek. Although divorce settlements usually don't revolve much on adultery, I wanted to make it apparent she wasn't the victim here. I had screenshots of the books she shared with him, images they had taken together, and even quotes from some of her acquaintances who knew about the affair but remained silent. I merely wanted the truth to come out. I wanted not to disgrace her. Besides that, I started getting ready for the unavoidable aftermath. Things would go bad once the truth came out and she discovered she wasn't getting half of anything. I so maintained my distance, keeping my attention on my work and personal life and ensuring I had everything ready for the next stage of the divorce. Derek's response added one element of intrigue to all of this. Kathy appeared all for it when she originally told him she wanted to leave me for him. Their small romantic notion of beginning a new life together. But Derek started withdrawing as soon as the divorce processes started to get disorganized. As it happens, he wasn't quite as committed to Kathy as she believed. Based on what I have heard, he began to have cold feet upon realizing that being with her would require handling her financial problems. Though Kathy was ready to commit to it, she was expecting this great new life with Derek. Actually, the incident caused word of mouth to spread about his beginning loss of gym patrons. People apparently wish not to deal with a trainer who is known to have interacted with married ladies. Derek has been attempting to remove himself from Kathy lately, and she is beginning to realize perhaps this was not the fairy tale she had in mind. Though I nearly feel horrible for her, I then remember what she has done. Regarding myself, I'm having mixed feelings. I feel justified on one hand. I'm happy I guarded my assets and that Kathy isn't leaving with what she expected. I can't help but feel a little depressed though at the same moment. For all, this was my marriage. Once I adored Kathy. I felt we would lead a life together. Though I know it's for the best, seeing it come apart like this is difficult. Update 2. Since my last report, things have veered somewhat wild. Kathy is becoming desperate and showing in the worst possible manner. She's trying to make my life horrible since she understands she won't get the expected payback from this divorce. The most recent is her threatening to damage my job and reputation at work. She told me straight out that she would make sure everyone at my company knew what a scumbag I was, should I fail to make things simpler for her, give her more money. She first confused me about what she meant, but it soon became evident when she started showing up at my workplace unexpectedly. She was cool the first time, seeming as though she simply needed to communicate. She snapped though when I informed her there was nothing else to talk about. She began speaking, stating things like, "I'll make sure everyone here knows the truth about you." Luckily, I managed to get her out of there before things got more out of hand, but she is clearly becoming erratic. Her behavior at home, or rather, her temporary residence with her parents, has been chaotic too. She returned home with her parents after learning she would not be walking away with the predicted large payment. According to what I've heard, her situation hasn't been doing great. Though they are not really happy with how things have turned out, her parents are supportive. I suppose even they see through her victim play. According to mutual acquaintances, she has been acting as though she is about to have a breakdown, lashing out, and fighting with her family. The legal side of things has grown more difficult as well. Kathy's attorney is making every effort to get dirt on me. Even though my attorney has consistently told my parents that assets are not up for grabs in this divorce, they filed motions to subpoena my parents' financial data. Though it's obviously meant to rattle me, it isn't succeeding. Though clearly meant to rattle me, it is not working. In search of anything, That may imply I was hiding assets or under-the-table income. Kathy's team also filed a motion to depose my colleagues at work. Although they are grabbing at straws, handling it is taxing. Every time we believe we have attended to one of their needs, they return with another. The whole thing feels like an endless chess game right now. Kathy and her staff try to offset every action I do, but owing to my lawyer and the strict legal protections my father established years ago, I have been one step ahead. Still, it's taxing, and I'm not sure how long I can keep this going until we find ourselves before real courts. Regarding legal processes, we have previously twice tried mediation. Actually, both times it has been a total fiasco. After roughly 20 minutes, Kathy insisted on half of the house and our money, therefore ending the first session. Though Kathy wouldn't hear it, my lawyer presented the reality of the matter, that the house was in my father's name and that there wasn't quite as much money as she believed. She bolted, charging me with lying and claiming that the mediator was biased against her. The second try was not much improved. Kathy arrived this time carrying a set of utterly irrational expectations. She demanded half of all our savings, even if they hardly exist, full ownership of the house, and alimony for at least 5 years. Kathy lost it when my attorney coolly reiterated once more her lack of entitlement to any of that. She began screaming about how I was leaving her empty and about how she had given all for me. Though inside I was boiling, I sat there attempting to keep cool. She was the one who desired the divorce, cheated, and now she's behaving as though I am the one destroying her life. Unbelievably beautiful. That session made it quite evident that, whether I like it or not, this divorce is headed for court. Besides that, Kathy has been using money borrowed from friends and relatives to pay her legal bills. She obviously didn't want the divorce to linger for this length of time, and today she finds herself short-funded. Though I'm not really clear how she intends to keep paying her aggressive attorney, that's not my concern. She acts more erratically the more desperate she gets. Mutual acquaintances have informed me she spends much of her time at home complaining to anybody who would listen about how I have destroyed her life. Some of her friends have started separating from her since they are tired of the drama and her continuous playing the victim card. Kathy seemed to be losing what she expected to get out of this divorce. I have been trying my best to remain cool under all of this and manage things tactically. I refute every new charge or demand Kathy makes with facts. I have nothing to conceal, hence whatever financial record they ask for I present. More than I can say for Kathy's team, my attorney has been outstanding in ensuring we are strictly obeying the law. I have also been trying to honor the privacy of my parents. Although Kathy's attempts to pull them into this mess irritate me, fortunately legal safeguards prevent her from gaining access to their financial records. Still, her even trying indicates just how dire she is. She seems to believe that, if she digs deep enough, she will uncover some buried gem I have been holding from her, yet, nothing comes of search. Update 3. When the day of the court hearing finally arrived, one would not be able to adequately describe the stress. Kathy arrived swinging and started to testify first. She made it plain that she thought I had been keeping assets from her all along. She said I lied to her about our actual wealth, concealed money in hidden accounts, and changed our budget. Emotional, she portrayed herself as the victim left with nothing after giving her career over to help me. At one point she was crying on the stand, discussing how she had trusted me with everything only to be shocked by the divorce and my alleged financial dishonesty. The big blow, though, came when my attorney offered proof of her involvement with Derek. The jury, the judge, everyone could understand what was actually going on as soon as the books, images, and specifics of her relationship with him surfaced. Before my very eyes, Kathy's victim story began to fall apart. She even tried to minimize the affair at one point, claiming it was a mistake and had nothing to do with the divorce, but by then the damage was done. Her reputation was damaged, and it was abundantly evident that her financial needs were motivated more by avarice than by anything else. When it came time for me to testify, I tried to remain cool and follow the facts. My attorney had done a good job of preparing me. I knew that becoming defensive or angry would not strengthen my case. I went over everything: how my assets had been established in my father's name for years, how I had given complete financial reports, and how I had tried to manage the divorce amiably through mediation. I also testified on Kathy's threats, unpredictable behavior, and ongoing smear campaign activity. My attorney demonstrated how unfounded all the charges she had leveled at me, publicly and in court, by providing documentation of each. We presented the truth about our finances. My father owned the house, our savings were meager at best, and she could not claim any secret treasure of money. The judge apparently valued my simplicity. Though I didn't try to denigrate Kathy, I also didn't sugarcoat the truth of what had happened. The facts were unambiguous, thus I took care to express them free from drama or hyperbole. During the trial, a few important witnesses were summoned. Their evidence helped to close the business. First, my dad spoke first. He described the financial plan we had set in place years ago, how the property was in his name, how the investments were under his management, and how all of this was done as a kind of long-term financial security. He made it abundantly evident that Kathy had no legal title to these assets and that they were his, not mine. Next on schedule was one of my coworkers from the office. My colleague promptly stopped Kathy's team's attempt to claim that I had been hiding money by getting bonuses or under-the-table payments off course. He testified on my regular, open pay and meager income. There were no hidden sources of money or secret bonuses, only the simple payback I'd mentioned. These testimonies were absolutely essential in demonstrating Kathy's charges lack basis. The judge could see that Kathy had simply a straightforward open financial arrangement that she had never bothered to learn about, not any major scheme on my side. The judge decided at last following days of testimony and legal arguments. Hearing the words, "the divorce would be awarded in my favor" was a great comfort. Kathy insisted on half of the house and our money, and we were flatly denied both. Kathy had no title to the house or most of our possessions, the judge said, since my father owned them. Her only award was a meager sum of alimony, and even that was only temporary. Barely enough to pay her legal bills, let alone the lifestyle she hoped to keep. The judge made it plain that his decision included Kathy's affair and her lack of household financial contribution. He judged based on her attempts to present herself as a victim. She was seen through. I felt a great weight drop off my shoulders when the decision was announced. That moment washed away the months of anxiety, the continuous accusations, the dread of losing everything. Legally, I knew I was in the clear. Kathy, on the other hand, did not find the decision appealing. She started crying as soon as the judge concluded, yelling that the system was unfair and that I had misled her out of what was rightly hers. She left her attorney looking frustrated as she bolted from the courtroom. Though I'm not sure what she expected, it was quite evident she hadn't gotten ready for the potential of losing. For me, the first reaction was relief. I left the courtroom after thanking my attorney for a job well done over the entire process. Texts from friends and relatives praising me on the result were flashing on my phone. Word had gone fast, and the neighborhood was already debating the matter. Knowing the truth had come out and that I could at last start my life felt terrific. But Kathy was still not done. She had a complete collapse in front of a small gathering outside the courtroom. She began yelling about my lying and system manipulation as well as her intended appeal of the ruling. She lacks the means to accomplish that. Hence the dilemma is her attorney made it abundantly evident during the proceedings that she was running low on money. From what I have heard, she is still borrowing from friends and relatives simply to get by. Having said that, I really appreciate my father's counsel and insight on financial protection. Whose kind of mess I would be in right now without his assistance. My friends, relatives, and colleagues, who stayed with me even when Kathy was circulating accusations and attempting to damage my reputation, have my thanks as well. Looking ahead, I have hope. Though I know it will take time to completely heal from this, both emotionally and financially, I am ready to start my life. From all of this, I have gained some insightful knowledge. I will not be repeating the same errors. Right now, I'm mostly trying to get back to normal and savor the tranquility that results from closing this chapter at last. My brother had an affair with my fiancée, got her pregnant before my wedding, and my parents supported him over me. This will be a lengthy one, and it's as disorganized as it sounds. Though there is much to explore here, I will attempt to keep it as succinct as feasible. Whether someone believes this or not doesn't matter. It's just so ridiculous that I have to voice this. I won't sugarcoat anything either, but I will steer clear of any information that would allow someone unfamiliar with the circumstances to identify myself. Up until a few months ago, I was engaged to my 5-year girlfriend. We will call her Sarah, 32-year-old guy. Let's call my younger brother Mike. He is 29 and has always been the perfect child in our family. I have to provide some background on my family and how we came to this place if I truly want to grasp the depth of this betrayal and why it struck me so deeply. Mike could not do anything wrong in our parents' view growing up, whereas I was continuously chastised for the most minor transgressions. This was clear and severe, not simply ordinary sibling rivalry or minor partiality. Mike broke something, and I would be accused. I would be the one grounded while he started a fight. He would get a new video game console if we both received straight A's. I would get a pat on the back and be advised to keep it up. Our parents, Tom and Linda, always found a justification for their actions. Mike's younger brother requires more attention. Given you are the older one, you ought to know better. We have to be careful with Mike, he is just more sensitive. I felt unworthy and unwanted in my own house from the never-ending assault of double standards and gaslighting. The preference just grew as we aged. When I enrolled on a partial scholarship in a decent college, my parents hardly noticed. But they threw Mike a big celebration and purchased him a car to drive with when he decided to enroll in community college. Not mind that for years I had been riding 5 miles each way to my part-time work. I left right away to get away from the poisonous surroundings at home. I worked 2 jobs, pay debt, and negotiate college. Mike left a semester later, saying he didn't belong in college. Our parents entirely agreed with his choice, complimenting him for knowing himself and for not fitting social norms. Over the next 5 years, they even funded his string of failing companies. My family always found a way to drag me back in, even with the space I tried to create between us. Holiday dinners were a torture of subdued jabs and not quite subtle comparisons. "Oh, are you still working at that entry-level job? Well, Mike is considering launching another company. He is quite entrepreneurial." Not that I was really laying a solid career while Mike was devouring our folks' retirement money. I tried to keep a friendship with Mike despite all. Though it was always one-sided, he remained my brother after all. I would try to connect, reach out, and he would either ignore me or find some way to make the discussion into a competition he might win. Should I get promoted, he would suddenly have a great opportunity right ahead. If I began dating someone, he would also magically be in a committed relationship. I met Sarah in one of my attempts to get back in touch with Mike. We clicked right away as she was friends with one of his brief relationships. Smart, humorous, compassionate, and extremely beautiful, Sarah was everything I had ever wanted in a companion. We began dating, and for the first time in my life I felt really cherished and joyful. My parents were inevitably less than delighted. They questioned what Sarah saw in me and made disparaging remarks about how she was out of my level. Mike, on the other hand, started abruptly to show great interest in my life. Wanting to know everything about Sarah, he would ask about her non-stop. I was simply glad he seemed to be interested in something from my life at the time. Looking back, I ought to have spotted the warning signs. After 1 year of dating, Sarah and I moved in together and things were fantastic. We both drove, had decent jobs, and discussed the future. I began to feel as though perhaps, just maybe, I could have the great profession, loving partner, maybe even children someday that I had always wanted. On our 4th anniversary, I asked Sarah. It was simply a peaceful supper at home and a moving speech, nothing spectacular. She answered yes, and I thought I was on top of things. We agreed to engage in a protracted process and slow down wedding preparation. We had our whole life ahead of us. Or so I believed. We were not in a hurry. To put it mildly, the responses were mixed when we told my family we were engaged. Saying, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but, my mother slapped on a fake grin. "Grunt," my dad murmured, "good luck with that," then turned back to watch the TV. Mike, though, had the most unusual response. He praised us, but his smile seemed almost predatory and wrong. I dismissed it then, attributing it to my own fears. Work stress and wedding plans occupied the next year. Working long hours at our jobs, Sarah and I were saving money for the wedding and a down payment on a house. Though we saw less of each other than we used to, I reasoned it was only a phase. Every marriage experiences difficult times. Looking back, I ought to have seen the warning signals. Sarah grew more aloof, constantly on her phone, grinning at texts from someone she would rapidly claim to be merely an acquaintance from work. She began leaving more with her pals, arriving late home smelling of cologne and wine. I did, however, entirely trust her. I never even gave her any thought regarding possible cheating, let alone with my own brother. Sarah started acting somewhat strangely over 4 months ago. She was temperamental, restless, and often sick. Thrilled with the possibility, I considered perhaps she might be pregnant. We had not been trying, but we discussed wanting children at last. Imagining nursery colors and baby names, I began to arrange how I would help her. She dropped the bomb one evening after sitting down with tears in her eyes. Though not mine, she was pregnant. I looked shocked. Our hectic schedules had caused us not to be close in a while, but I never anticipated she would cheat on me. She broke down totally and mumbled, "It's Mike," when I inquired who the father was. My whole universe collapsed in that instant. Everything I knew, everything I had built my life around, came toppling. I found it difficult to breathe. I had no ideas. I could only feel this intense loss and treachery. Sarah tried to clarify. Her words came out in a hurry between sobbing. Apparently, it began during our engagement party. Mike had cornered her and informed her she was making a mistake in marriage. Playing on her insecurities, he reassured her she could do better and he could give her everything I couldn't. They had been having an affair for months, so it was not just a one-time occurrence. That evening, I sent Sarah out. I couldn't stand to look at her or be in the same room as the lady who had so totally betrayed me. She begged me to pardon her. Said it was a mistake. Said she loved me. But all I could think of was how many times she had lied to my face. She had been with my brother how many times wearing the ring I had given her? I phoned Mike after Sarah went. Not even now can I recall what I said. All of it was a haze of hurt and wrath. At first, he attempted to seem cool, saying it was only a drunken error and that it had no bearing on anything. He became hostile and responded, "Well, maybe if you'd have been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me." When I pressed him, I observed ready to do anything that would cause him regretting what he said, I got in my car and headed to his flat. Though I'm not sure what I intended to do, our parents were already there when I arrived. Mike apparently initially phoned them, crafting some narrative about how Sarah had seduced him and how terrible he felt. And you also know what? They came to believe him. Always they do. While my dad merely stood there with his arms crossed, looking disappointed in me, of course, not in his dear Mike, my mom started lecturing me about forgiveness and family right away. They wouldn't listen when I tried to describe exactly what happened. They insisted that since family comes first, I should forgive Mike and help Sarah through the pregnancy. I forgot. Years of pent-up wrath and bitterness spilled forth. I told them just what I thought of their distorted sense of devotion. How they had always favored Mike at my cost. How they never once stood on my side or helped me. Mike was dead to me, I informed him. He was no longer my brother. Since they no longer had me, I advised my parents they could have the son they had always desired. Ignoring their calls and pleads, I bolted. Without a goal in mind, I drove for hours just desiring to get away from everything and everyone. When I got home, I had hundreds of missed calls and messages, some from Sarah begging for another opportunity, some from Mike alternately between apologies and accusations, but most were from my parents, demanding that I grow up and atone. I seldom ate, hardly slept, ignored them all. Using all of my accumulated vacation time, I called out of business. I avoided everybody and found it intolerable to have to explain what had happened. Trying to find where I'd gone wrong, I simply sat in my apartment going back over every minute of my relationship with Sarah and every contact with Mike. 3 months have gone by now. To handle all this turmoil, I changed my number, relocated to a new apartment and began treatment. Still, my family won't let go. Even with my best attempts to cut touch, they find ways to meddle in my life. Starting to show up at my place of employment, they are trying to ambush me and drive a reconciliation. Crying about how I'm separating the family, my mother corners me in the parking lot. Gruff voicemails from my dad on how I should man up and pardon Mike. Mike has personally tried to approach me on a few occasions, but thus far I have been able to dodge him. To guilt trip me into forgiving Mike, they have even dispatched flying monkeys, that is, extended family members. Suddenly blowing my phone, aunts, uncles, cousins I haven't spoken to in years are reminding me how important family is and how I should let bygones be. They seem to be living in some other world where what Mike and Sarah did was only a minor error rather than a life-altering one. The most recent growth is yesterday Sarah sent me a note. She intends to co-parent with Mike and is keeping the baby. And now, guess what? About becoming grandparents, my parents are over the moon and totally overlooked the circumstances of how it happened and the nasty comments my mother and father made when Sarah was with me. Apologues and explanations abound in the letter, which discussed how Mike and she had discovered true love in trying circumstances. She even dared to add she hoped the child will benefit from us all being friends someday. I am at the very end of it. Part of me wants to simply sever ties entirely and start over somewhere else, perhaps go to another state, change my name, create a new life free from knowledge of this mess. Another side of me, though, is so enraged that I want to stay and fight so they may realize how screwed up things are overall. Not sure what to do going forward. Every sphere of my life has suffered from betrayal. Alone with my thoughts makes me uncomfortable. I never gave dating any thought either. I get terrified thinking of depending on someone like that. Folks who believe I should choose the high road and reconcile with my family, as if I am the one in the wrong for not wanting to play happy families with the folks who most wounded me, have lost friends over this too. The idea of Sarah and Mike having a kid together, a child that ought to have been mine, is like a continual knife in my stomach. Logically, the youngster is innocent in all this. The baby's parents are lying, cheating scumbags. It is not the baby's fault. But I cannot feel anything nice about its existence. My parents have begun discussing my obligation to participate in the lives of the child and my role as an uncle. I get sick physically at the idea. How am I expected to approach this child without spotting the final emblem of my brother's treachery? Reddit, I suppose my question is. Am I the expletive for not forgiving my brother and ex-fiancé? Is it bad of me to wish to terminate relations with my family over this? Any guidance on how to move forward would be much valued, since right now I feel as though gaslighting and treachery are drowning me in the sea. I understand this was lengthy. If you have read thus far, thank you. In a sense, just writing all this out has been relieving. I'm not sure what I should anticipate from publishing this. Maybe validation, guidance, or maybe just the opportunity to yell into the void and have someone, anybody, hear me. Edit. Holy mess, this exploded overnight. I appreciate all of your support and counsel. The response overwhelms me, and it will take some time to look over all the comments. Nonetheless, I wanted to answer some typical queries. 1. Certainly, I have discussed a restraining order against my family with a lawyer. It is under work. 2. No, I am not intending to interact with the baby. Although the child is not at fault, I cannot be engaged without losing my sanity. 3. For anyone curious about my employment, I have previously discussed the matter with HR. They are sympathetic and aware. They have given me the opportunity to work from home more regularly and raised front desk security levels. I appreciate their awareness. 4. Many of you have inquired whether I have given any thought to migrating to another city or state. I am very definitely considering this. There are offices of my company in various other cities, hence a relocation could be feasible. I am balancing the advantages and disadvantages. 5. To those advocating DNA testing, Sarah came clean about the affair and the chronology fits. I have no cause to think the child isn't Mike's. Even if by some miracle it turned out to be mine, I'm not sure I could ever look at that child without considering this. 6. The volume of persons relating such tales has overwhelmed me. Knowing how frequent this kind of treachery is breaks my heart, but it also curiously comforts me since I'm not alone. I appreciate everyone's vulnerability and sharing. 7. To the person asking whether I had thought about suing Mike for alienation of affection, I investigated it, but sadly, my state does not accept it. Though right now I'm not sure I have the stamina for a legal fight. 8. Several have noted that Mike's actions seem egotistical. Many of the articles I have begun reading about narcissistic personality disorder speak to me. Though not justification, some of his behavior helps me to comprehend. 9. For anyone wondering about Sarah's family, they are as startled and repulsed as one would anticipate. They have cut off communication with her and contacted me to give their support. Though little consolation, I value it. 10. To the person wondering whether I considered having children of my own someday, to be honest, this whole experience has made me doubt whether I want a family at all. I'm trying, though, not to make any major decisions while I'm still digesting things. Though I'll let you know if anything noteworthy occurs. Right now I'm concentrating on recovery and forward movement. Once more, thanks to Reddit. More than you would realize, you have contributed. Your guidance and encouragement have really been a lifeline amid trying circumstances and have given me much to consider. Though I can't answer every remark, kindly know I'm reading them all and they help me feel less isolated in this. Update 1. Hey Reddit, it's been a total rollercoaster 2 weeks since my last post. First of all, I want to thank everyone for the great advice and support. Reading over all your responses has been both sad and yet consoling. I never anticipated my post to explode like that. The frequency of this sort of treachery is disorganizing. To put it mildly, the last several weeks have been demanding. Recall my remark of working on a restraining order. That descended into a complete ordeal though. We had a hearing booked after my attorney turned in the paperwork. Given the facts and ongoing harassment, I felt it would be simple. I corrected myself. With their own attorney, an elegant man in an expensive suit most likely charging more per hour than I earn in a week, my parents turned up for the hearing. Claiming I was separating the family over a basic misunderstanding. As if Mike had stumbled and fallen into my fiancé, they painted me as the unstable one. Luckily the judge was not purchasing it. She issued the restraining order against Mike and my parents, but not without my mother crying in the courtroom and my father gazing at me like I had just committed murder. Mike's expression though, I swear, if looks could kill, I would be 6 feet under. Mike tried to get to me as we were exiting the courtroom, reminding his attorney of the recently imposed restraining order. She stood between us. Mike merely scoffed and stated that I couldn't hide behind a piece of paper permanently. This is not over. If I said his remarks didn't knock me a bit, I would be lying. For now, at least I have some legal protection. Another dream has been the office scenario. Recall how I mentioned my family had started showing up at my workplace? That reached a head last week though. My assistant buzzed in reporting my mother was in the lobby and creating a scene while I was in a meeting with a client. She apparently brought a photo album and was trying to show my colleagues infant images of Mike and me as she sobbed over how her boys used to be so close. I left the conference and descended to the lobby, where I discovered my mother surrounded by a bunch of awkward-looking colleagues. She was midway in recounting how Mike and I used to bathe each other when young children. She rushed toward me when she saw me, chatting about a baby shower, but I stopped her. She should leave right away, I told her, or I would call the cops and have her taken off for trespassing against the restraining order. Her expression resembled what I would have slapped her with, but after everything they have gone through, I couldn't muster myself to care. Security let her out, and I had to spend the next hour damage management with my employer and colleagues. Fortunately, most of them were understanding, but I could see others were wondering what kind of drama I was bringing into the workplace. Still, the incident with Mike was where it truly veers off course. I was at the gym last Saturday working out some of my resentment on the punching bag. I was so intent on my exercise that I didn't see someone approaching me until I heard his voice. As I whirled around, Mike was grinning at me like he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began to run his lips loud enough for others close to hear. He chuckled when I urged him to go before I phoned the police, claiming he would tell them how I had been threatening Sarah and him. I became lost at that point. My fist hooked with his jaw as I struck at him. He stammered back, then launched himself at me. Except this time, no one told me to be the larger person and let Mike win. We ended up on the floor trading punches like we were kids again, without parents to break us up. Before the gym personnel drew us apart, I made a few decent hits. I could feel my eye bulging closed while Mike's nose was bleeding. We were both screaming, seeking release and aiming at one another once more. It was only when the gym manager threatened to call the police that I snapped out of it. I got ready and headed off. Still pulsing with excitement, I answered a call from an unidentified number as I was headed home. Against better taste, I responded to it. Sarah, shouting at me about how I had cracked Mike's nose, might require surgery. I laughed. It was not against will. Her anger at me following all they had done seemed ridiculous, too much. I apologized to her for hurting her little boyfriend, the one she had been sleeping with behind my back for months. She began to cry then, continuing on about her stress, how the baby could sense her misery and how selfish I could be. I blocked the number and hung on hers. The fight produced quite a strong blowback. News had crept across our social circle like wildfire. Texts from friends and relatives, some supporting me and others calling me names for beating my poor defenseless brother, were exploding on my phone. Reaching out once more, Sarah's parents expressed their dismay in their daughter and reiterated their support of me. Though at this point I'll take anything I can get, it was a meager comfort. Nowadays, the restraining order seems inadequate. Mike has proved he is ready to break it, hence I am concerned about his future actions. The legal fallout has been a horror show. My attorney called me the day following the gym incident. Mike apparently had accused me of assault. I described what had happened. How Mike had provoked me. How he had broken the restraining order. We would fight it, my lawyer groaned, but given that I delivered the first punch, it might be an uphill struggle. We are already pressing our own charges against Mike for breaching the restraining order. Though nothing is definite, my attorney feels sure this will strengthen our case. I had to show the cops the marks on my face and knuckles and make statements to them. Having to defend myself against my own brother makes one embarrassed. Mike and I have been banned from the gym, although I can't say I blame them. It sucks. That gym was one of the only places I felt I could properly release some of my wrath. I have always been close to my cousin Amy, so she contacted me the other day. The family has been complaining a lot about her supporting me, but she is not wavering. She shared with me some of what goes on behind the scenes. My parents apparently have been telling everyone I'm experiencing some sort of mental collapse. They claim I'm just jealous and can't let go since Sarah and Mike's relationship began shortly following our breakup. While some family members are buying it, Amy notes that many others are not. Knowing that they are out there propagating lies about me while I'm trying to keep my head down and heal irritates me. Things at work have been, to put it mildly, strained. I can sense my colleagues are walking on eggshells around me following the incident with my mother in the lobby and the fight with Mike that is trending on local social media. Early this week, my manager summoned me into his office. He began by stating he valued me as an employee and that I'm going through a trying period, but then he really hit me. He believes it would be best if I took a break just till things calm down. If you would want, he continued, we can call it a personal sabbatical, paid, of course. I wanted to disagree, telling him that right now only work keeps me sane, but I could see the choice had already been taken. I agreed, thanked him for his patience, and got to work packing my office. 2 of my colleagues were gossiping about how my brother had got my fiancée pregnant as I was leaving. I departed slamming my office door louder than required, rather pleased to see them jump. Saying all of this isn't hurting me would be dishonesty. To get out of my apartment, I have started late-night lengthy rides. Sometimes I find myself wondering how the hell my life turned into such a mess when parked outside my previous apartment, The one I lived with Sarah. Amid all of this turmoil, I discovered help from an unlikely source, Sarah's younger sister Emma. Emma contacted me on social media, apologizing for her sister's behavior and lending her support. I was first dubious. What if this were some sort of trick? But after chatting with her, I found she shares my hatred of Sarah's actions. She has been sharing with me details on Sarah and Mike's life. Apparently, they have moved in together and act as though they did not simply blow up many lives to be together. Emma says Sarah has been trying to present herself as the victim in all this, sobbing to anybody who will listen about how she never meant to hurt anyone. And in what ways she and Mike are soulmates who found each other against all odds. I get ill to my stomach from it, but I appreciate Emma keeping me current. After all, information is power, even if it is knowledge I would prefer not have. Another horror has been the social media scenario. When it comes to social media, I have always been a really quiet person. But this whole incident has put me in an unwelcome public view. On a local Facebook group, someone, probably one of Mike's buddies, posted about our gym brawl. The post omitted our names, but it sufficiently detailed the circumstances to allow anyone who knows us to work it out. The section on comments became a battlefield. Some people were supporting me, claiming Mike received his just compensation. Others called me erratic and advised I should be locked up. One night after a few too many beers, I made the grave error of looking over some of the comments. I ended up hard enough tossing my phone across the room to break the screen. Since then, I have turned off most of my social media accounts. The continuous alerts and the messages from folks I haven't spoken to in years suddenly wanting all the juicy specifics of my personal life make me unable to handle it. Having all that has transpired, I have come to see I cannot continue to live in this city. Too many memories abound, too many opportunities for running across either Mike or Sarah or my parents. I've been researching moves inside my organization. Our Seattle office has a seemingly interesting opening. Though I've never loved continuous rain, at this point I would relocate to the moon if it would mean escaping all this drama. Though I have not yet made any decisions, the concept of a fresh start is growing more and more intriguing. New city, new apartment, new life. Somewhere nobody remembers me as the man whose brother knocked down his fiancée. Since the restraining order was obtained, my parents have been unusually silent. I'm waiting for the other shoe to fall so they may find some fresh approach to try to push their way back into my life. Sarah has been distributing the word of her pregnancy all around. Emma tells me she has been sharing regular updates on social media, ultrasound images, belly shots, the works, always with a caption regarding how grateful she and Mike are, how thrilled they are to start their family. Every additional bit of data feels like a fresh wound opening, the hurt just waiting to resurface when I start to heal. Right now then, is where things stand. I felt 2 weeks ago that my life could not become any more disorganized, but strangely it has. I still hurt and am angry, but I also am exhausted. Tired of justifying myself. Thus Reddit, I suppose this is more of an update than a change of direction. Not sure, a cry into the emptiness. Right now I'm not even clear about what I'm asking for. Advice? Affordability? Time machine? I could go back and never introduce Sarah to my brother. I'll attempt to keep you all informed whatever occurs going forward. More to me than you could realize is the result of your support. It's encouraging to be reminded that even if it seems as though lies and treachery rule my entire life, there are still decent individuals out there. Final update. Hey Reddit, I'm back with what I expect to be my last post on this entire fiasco after not updating for a week. First of all, I want to thank each of you for your help and guidance along this process. During the worst of my life, your comments have been a lifeline. Where therefore ought one to start? In just 7 days, a lot has transpired. I am still working to sort it all. I suppose I would begin with the most important news. I am relocating. Indeed, that's correct. I jumped in and agreed to a transfer to our Seattle headquarters. Though it was not a simple choice, I felt I needed a fresh start following all that had gone down. The choice followed last week's really difficult day. I had just returned from another meeting with my attorney regarding Mike's assault allegations when I came upon a note in my mailbox. From Sarah it was. Curiosity won me over even though I nearly threw it away without opening it. Inside was a handwritten note discussing her and Mike's great excitement about their baby and an ultrasonic image. She continued on regarding how the baby would love to have its uncle in its life and how I could find it in my heart to be pleased for them. Red caught my eye. I had grabbed my phone, unblocked Sarah, and phoned her before I knew what I was doing. She grabbed up the second ring and I let loose. I informed her exactly what I considered her, Mike, and their contented small family to be. If she believed I would ever want anything to do with that child, I told her she was insane. As far as I could tell, Mike, the baby, and she could all go to hell. Though it wasn't my best moment, it seemed like I'd at last uttered all the things I had been holding back. I realized then I had to leave this city. That same evening, I phoned my supervisor and said I wanted to move to Seattle. To be really honest, he seemed relieved. He was probably concerned about how this drama would damage the business. He guaranteed to expedite the documentation, and by the next morning it was official. 2 weeks allowed me to pack my life and go across the nation. My family and social circle soon started to buzz with word of my relocation. Normally, my parents were rather angry. Once more breaking the restraining order, they showed up at my flat unannounced trying to talk me out of it. Saying I was deserting the family, my mother was crying. Red-faced and furious with my selfish and immature behavior, my dad was ranting. I stayed quiet. I just phoned the cops and had them taken off for breaching the restraining order. My mother yelled that I would regret this, that family was everything, and I was throwing it all away as they were being let out. I just closed the door and resumed packing. Mike responded in a different way. Presumably because of ongoing legal concerns, he did not try to personally reach out to me. Instead, he posted a long piece on social media on how some people struggle to see others happy and on how he and Sarah were overcoming hate to concentrate on their new family. Clearly meant for me, it sought to present himself as the victim. Though I'll confess it stung to see how many people liked and commented in support of him, I told myself that their viewpoint doesn't count as they don't know the reality. Among the most unexpected responses was Sarah's. Following our phone talk, she contacted her sister Emma, who, should you recall, had been keeping me informed on Sarah and Mike's developments. My statements apparently struck closer than I had anticipated. Emma informed me Sarah had broken down, confessing she was afraid of the future and felt what she and Mike had done was terrible. Bless her, my cousin Amy said she could help me pack. She even informed me further about the family's situation. Amy informed me that my aunt, the sister of my mother, had a major blowout with her mother, calling her out for consistently favoring Mike and driving me away. It grew really heated, with my aunt remarking that with their years of favoritism, my mom and dad were reaping what they had created. That someone is at last calling them out on their behavior makes me somewhat happy. Although the legal matter is still under flux, my attorney tells me that my relocation has no bearing on anything. Mike broke the restraining order, hence we are still charging him fees, and we are contesting the assault accusations he leveled against me. Given Mike's track record of breaking the restraining order, my attorney feels sure the judge would see through his lies. Moving across the nation should also help prove that I am not a threat to Mike, thereby helping to have his charges dropped. After this, I'm not sure whether I will publish any more updates. Starting anew means bidding farewell to the past, and as beneficial as this community has been, I believe it's time for me to distance myself from rewriting this narrative. I have to concentrate on starting my new life instead of muckering the old one. This thus seems to be my last update. Hope for me, Reddit. In Seattle, I have a completely fresh life ready for me and want to maximize it. Uncovering a decade of secrets, suspecting my husband fathered his best friend's kids and now one wants to date our daughter. OOP is married to Luke, who has a girl BFF Amy who he claims is like a sister to him. Even after getting married, Luke maintained a very close bond with Amy. OOP has 4 kids. Sophie, 15, Owen, 12, Louise, 10, and Carter, 6. Amy has 4 kids. Tom, 17, Kaylee, 14, and twins, Adam and Jenna, 9, but no one knows who the dad is and has never been in any long-term relationships. All the kids have grown up together and are close. OOP has begun to suspect that Luke has fathered at least one, if not all of Amy's kids. Amy stopped having kids after Luke had a vasectomy. The kids also look like Tom. OOP has turned a blind eye for years, but now Tom wants to date Sophie. OOP is worried they are actually half-siblings and Tom and Amy also don't want it to happen. Update. The 5th of September 2024, OOP doesn't try a sneaky DNA test, but confronts Luke and Amy who deny anything untoward and Amy refuses to have her kids' DNA tested. Luke's mother also suspects something. OOP and Luke have a big fight and he spends the night at Amy's. Update 2. The 6th of September 2024. OOP confides in Sophie about what she suspects about Tom's real father and is surprised to find out that the kids already suspect this and the relationship was actually a plan to get things out in the open and force the truth from Luke and Amy. OOP plans to move ahead with a divorce and try to get a DNA test done as well. Update 3. I think my husband fathered his best friend's children, and now one of them is attracted to my daughter. 3 days later. First, a few points to answer from the comments. I don't have any DNA test results back yet. That can take weeks. But now that I know Sophie is in no danger of dating a relative, the pressure is off. I'll get into this momentarily, But it frankly no longer matters if Luke fathered the children. I highly doubt my father-in-law is having an affair with Amy. At worst, he might know, or even just suspect, the truth about Amy and Luke. But it's also possible that he just refuses to believe they would do such a thing. I've been vague about details for privacy, but to put it very simply, Jim and Amy are both pretty white. Kat and Luke are not. Had Jim fathered Amy's babies, they would look different than they do. Nevertheless, I do have an update. While a stream of comments have called me spineless and naive, called me a sister wife, as an ex-Mormon, that hits a particular nerve. And most recently, a stream of comments have said my story is fake. Fair enough, it's the internet. But Luke is not the first scumbag husband to have two families. Several other comments have been incredibly kind and supportive, and I really appreciate that. Apologies if I haven't responded to a comment or direct message that you sent. I covered as many as I could, but I was literally getting hundreds, so I definitely missed several of them. First things first. I discussed this in the comments, but our little team has, supposedly, recruited my mother-in-law. I say supposedly, because Sophie and Tom were going to talk to her about getting help with submitting the DNA test, and, at the advice of my lawyer, I am staying out of the process. Officially, I told Sophie not to do it and she said she wouldn't. MIL hasn't contacted me about it either. Though we have been in touch, I'll get into that more in a moment. The bottom line is that I can honestly say I had no knowledge of any DNA test. Loophole City. Another bit of good news. I was digging through the paperwork in preparation for my divorce, wanting to get a head start against Luke, and one thing that came to my attention is that my name is on the paperwork for our home. Luke's name is not. I was the one who bought the house, and we always planned to add Luke onto the paperwork at some point, but we never got around to it, and eventually the idea was forgotten. It was my lawyer, Paige, who pointed this out to me, and it was like finding a winning lottery ticket on the ground. I don't know where I'd be without Paige. She's a dear friend from college who I reached out to, hat in hand, for help. She's been there for me this past week, not just as legal counsel but as a friend I really needed right now. The thing is, she's not our lawyer, me and Luke. We have our own family attorney who has helped us out of jams in the past. We clashed with our HOA a few years ago, not worth getting into right now. But Paige is a lawyer who specializes in family law and has handled divorces before. Luke remembers her from college and knows she went into law but doesn't know she's a divorce attorney. So I can have her over for coffee like we're catching up, and he has no idea anything is going on. Turns out, he's not the only one who can harbor someone under his spouse's nose under the guise of being a friend. So, on to the update. The last time I looked in Luke's phone was 3 months ago, around the point Sophie and Tom began to go around claiming they wanted to date. I found nothing. While I know how to search for recently deleted photos and didn't see any, my comments taught me how to find recently deleted messages. So when Luke was asleep, I did just that. Swiped his phone and brought it downstairs, checked recently deleted. I am glad I did, but I also wish I had not, because I'm still reeling from the pain. Sure enough, a conversation with Amy had been deleted. Recent text talking about the conflict between her and me, with Amy describing me as a problem, and Luke trying to pacify her. Without defending me at all, to be clear. They both alluded to how they had expected this for a while and just hoped it would never happen. Presumably me accusing them of having an affair. While the whole conversation and the fact that it was deleted was sketchy, nothing was actually admitted. So I scrolled a bit higher, to a few days before the fight. Amy's messages got a bit more flirty. Then, I saw it. 5 days before I confronted them, Amy had sent Luke a topless pic. A selfie with no shirt or bra. Guys, I teared up. I knew it was true. I knew it in my bones, but seeing the proof still cut me like a hot knife. Doesn't help that Amy's always had bigger breasts than me. I exited the Messages app and checked Luke's recently deleted photos. Sure enough, the same selfie was there, and others. Amy topless, Amy naked, in various poses to show off. There were pictures of the two of them together, cuddled and pressed close like a couple. In some of these she was naked. In some, they both were. There were videos. Amy sent Luke a video message of herself topless, and I had to actually hear her voice talking to him in a tone that made me sick, about how she was sending him a quick video to help him get through the day. In more than one video she called him her boo, and, hearing her call him that, I almost vomited. Stopped looking at the point, I'd seen enough. For about 5 minutes anyway, then a strange compulsion to keep searching led me to check Luke's laptop. I knew enough of his passcodes to access his iCloud storage and, yeah, basically more of the same. There were letters, long letters between them. I didn't have the heart to read past the first few lines of one of them, but I did read Luke mention our children. There were countless naked topless selfies of Amy. Selfies of them together. Videos where Amy appeared to be masturbating. There were sex tapes. Of the two of them. Tom had previously offered to try and hide a camera in Amy's room, but fuck, he never needed to. Luke was hiding a whole treasure trove under my nose all along. I scrolled, and scrolled, and scrolled. There were so many. Going back years. Not all of it was even sexual. There were some photos of Amy's kids too. One video was of Kaylee and the twins playing together when they were younger, and Luke and Amy's voices from behind the camera. There were even old pictures of Luke and Amy from when they were younger. I'd even say teenagers. I snapped. All these years I had been telling myself I had to be wrong, that it couldn't be true. Well, it was true. I know that no one forced me to look at as much of the evidence as I did, but I'm still hurting very badly from having seen it, and in that moment, I wanted to act, so I did. I called my lawyer, who is a remarkable woman. It was the middle of the night, so I had to call her twice, and she picked up. Though I had woken her, when I asked her to come by and said it was an emergency, she agreed. I also asked her to draw up the paperwork and have it ready. She told me that she'd already had it ready since I first reached out to her. As I waited for her, I went through the necessary channels on Luke's laptop to make sure he wouldn't be able to remotely disconnect our access to his little stash, changing passwords and all that. My lawyer, let's call her Paige, arrived, and I went outside to greet her in the car. Spent a good half hour in the passenger seat just crying, and she was great about that, before I passed her Luke's phone and his laptop, with all the information she needed to use them. She warned me that this could be considered theft. So I asked her to forward and print out copies of everything she could and then bring the items back, because I just couldn't bear to do it myself. She agreed. I went back inside, and then, I packed up Luke's things while the house slept. At one point Owen got up to use the bathroom and asked me what I was doing, but I told him I was just cleaning. Luke stirred once or twice while I was in the bedroom but did not wake. I got all of his things packed into trash bags and I loaded up the car. That's when I woke him up and told him to come outside. He was confused and half asleep, but he did notice things were missing. I ignored his questions and just told him to come with me. So he followed me outside. Once we were by the car, I pulled out the divorce papers and officially handed them to him. That was about when he figured out what I was doing, and he tried to talk me out of it. Tried to be sweet with me, to be tender. He kept insisting that he loved me and that there had never been anything with Amy. Kept trying to persuade me not to tear our family apart. Even 2 weeks ago, I might have wilted under him because the manipulation and gaslighting were truly masterclass, but I can see through it now. I didn't tell him that I knew he was full of shit, I didn't tell him what I had seen, I just told him we were finished. He tried a different approach. He refused to go. Stated firmly that our children were his too and that even if we were separating, I had no right to just decide the kids would stay with me over him. This was where I very coldly presented the paperwork reminding him that the house is in my name, and told him under no circumstances would my kids be staying with Amy. He argued a while longer, but in the end he decided to be the bigger person, and keep the peace. At that moment I didn't care where he went. Before he left, he did ask about his phone and laptop, and I waved him off by saying they were in one of the bags. Bought a little time. I couldn't sleep for the rest of that night. I cried more. Eventually I realized I'd have to wake my children up early and explain to the extent that I could. Naturally, I woke Sophie first. I told her that I had kicked her father out and that I had discovered evidence of an affair on his devices. I did not specify what kind of evidence and she did not ask. I woke up the others and gently told them that their dad had gone to stay somewhere else for a while. That I wasn't sure where, but from now on things were going to be different. Louise was the one to ask if we were getting divorced, and I couldn't lie to her. I told her yes. Owen asked when they could see their father again and I wanted to cry. Sophie was a very big help, urging her siblings to be sympathetic to me right now and worry about Dad later. I knew better than to poison them against their father. Paige warned me against doing that as well, so I only told Sophie that the affair was confirmed since she had already been in the know. However, as the kids were getting ready for school, Owen approached me and asked me point blank if it was about Amy. If Luke was going to be with her instead of me. I couldn't answer, but I suppose that's an answer on its own. Got the kids to school, and my next step was calling to have the locks changed. I knew Luke would be back for his devices before long, but thankfully Paige returned with them before he showed up again. It was a very quick visit. She just told me that all was accomplished, and she had records of everything we would need in court. Sure enough, Luke turned up an hour later demanding to know where his laptop and phone were. I had set them back in our bedroom like they had never moved, and I just told him he had forgotten them. He insisted that I had said they were in one of the bags, So I just shrugged him off and told him I must have been mistaken. After he grabbed them, he tried again to reason with me, but I just showed him the door. I knew the kids would start to come home from school before long, and I think he was trying to delay leaving so he could see them. I was not having it. I started shouting again and sent him on his way. I'm still just in absolute pain and despair for what I saw. I don't know if he'll realize that anyone went through his devices and made copies of the evidence, or if he suspects I saw anything, but he obviously didn't say so. After he left, I cried once again. Talked to my mother-in-law that night. Apparently Luke did show up to his parents' house, which was a surprise, as I was so certain he'd stay with Amy. But maybe even he knows how suspicious that would look to the children and doesn't want to rock the boat as much. Maybe he knows I'm more likely to let my children see their grandmother than Amy at this point, and he wants to see them to give his version of events. That is not happening. Kat already shared his version with me, that he relayed to her and Jim. That I'm having some kind of mental breakdown, that he wishes he could help me, but my paranoia is causing me to lash out and turn violent. I was never violent. I shoved him away when he tried to hold me, that is all. And what's so hilarious is that he didn't mention Amy at all to his parents. He didn't even frame it as me falsely believing he was having an affair. Even though that's his story when talking to me, he left Amy out of it when talking to his parents. Kat noticed that. She believes me. Jim doesn't know what to believe anymore. According to Kat, he seemed very troubled by what he heard from all sides. As for Amy, she's radio silent. Tom has told Sophie that she's acting like nothing is wrong but is clearly stressed out. That when her children ask, she makes the same sort of claims. That I'm having some kind of emotional nervous breakdown and pushing her away as well as Luke. She doesn't mention anything about my accusing them of an affair, but still puts it all on me. Amy has not reached out to talk to me directly, and I have not tried talking to her since our big argument. I haven't really told my kids anything, just that I'm having disagreements with Luke and Amy, though I was very clear that it is not a question of my mental health. Honestly, I think they all kind of know what's going on. Sophie continues to be my rock, as I try to be for her and the others, and Tom continues to be our spy in the ranks. Right now, my biggest regret is the stress that all of this is causing on the children, which I knew it would, but it still needed to be done. My life has fallen apart. But it was never my life. Comments. Comment 1. Owen asked if it was about Amy. All of your kids must have seen and heard things from them when they thought they weren't being observed. Please get them into counseling soon. You are amazing, stay strong and calm, that will negate all claims of you having a mental breakdown. You've got this. Comment 2. All the people who talked about keeping the kids together were off their rockers. Her 12-year-old knew there was something wrong and they have been constantly thrown into a situation that was uncomfortable for them. OP has to start putting her kids first. Comment 3. If this is fiction, nicely done. If this is real, you got this. Comment 4. This is how I feel. There's so much effort put into the story even if it was made up by her or AI, I'm all in. Comment 5. Oh, OP. I think I was secretly holding out hope that this would all turn out okay. But, life is not a fairy tale. It was a very brave thing you did, going through his devices and facing this truth. Kind of like breaking your own heart, you knew what you would find. I'm so proud of you. I can't imagine the strength it took to quietly pack his things while he slept peacefully in bed. Sounds like Luke is a master manipulator. The most recent convo with Amy even talked about knowing this would happen. He had a cover story to explain being kicked out locked and loaded. Curious to see how he can spin this into your fault once the truth comes out. I would inquire with your attorney about putting in a stipulation in your divorce decree that Amy not be allowed around your children or under the same roof during his custody times. Amy is a vile, disgusting woman and that's a hill I would be willing to die on. You can't do anything about Luke being around your children, but you can put any kind of stipulation like this built into your divorce decree. Seems you have done everything you could at this point. No matter how difficult it has been, you face the truth and now you will be able to live the rest of your life without a nagging thought at the back of your mind constantly. Don't stop updating. OOP, life is not a fairy tale indeed. You're right, the nagging worry is at least gone. In a way, I think not finding anything would have been worse, because it would have perpetuated the ambiguity. After talking to Tom I was all but certain but it was still possible to be a misunderstanding. That it wasn't true. Now I know for sure. And I hate knowing, but at least the question isn't hanging over me anymore. It's tricky, because them not being allowed to see Amy is going to impact their ability to see their best friends, half-siblings. If being my husband's affair partner was all it took for me to demand she not be allowed to see the kids, I feel like a lot of divorces would have clauses like that, but I never hear about it. I don't want Amy seeing my kids, but I'm not sure how realistic that is. Comment 6. I honestly don't understand why Luke and Amy went through all this trouble. No one was stopping them from being together at the beginning. Why do all this? They're literally psychotic. They're gonna start painting you as a crazy person to your circle, social media soon. Do you think you can get ahead of the curve and tell people the truth, social media? Without including the photos, videos but screenshots maybe? Of course only if your lawyer approves. Or at least once the divorce proceedings have started and Luke and Amy knows just how much evidence you have. If not, they're gonna spin the story as you went crazy and divorced Luke and they looked to each other for support and fell in love. I know you think no one will believe that story, but it's important your narrative gets out. New update. 3 days later. In my last post, there were a number of criticisms toward Paige. You guys will like this update. As it turns out, you weren't the only ones who had a problem with her. As far as the deed being in my name, it's not an absolute hook, line and sinker, but Paige is convinced that between that and my having been the one paying the mortgage, I stand a very good chance. It could be interpreted as a common marital property, but I'm going for primary custody with supervised visits anyway. I'm playing hardball. People also questioned whether I should still be posting these, but so long as it's all anonymous, I am in the clear. Doesn't even matter if someone who knows me could figure out I posted this. I didn't use any real names, or reveal my location, or anything like that. As for the laptop, even Paige admitted that was questionable, but technically I gave permission and she was only doing what I could have easily done on my own. I just really didn't want to go through all of that content. As far as the divorce papers, Paige had them filled out after the very first time I contacted her. My serving them to Luke was ceremonial. She still contacted him later to officially serve him and request his lawyer's details. But before he could respond, I had already done something a little sneaky. I reached out to our family attorney, the one who has always been on call to represent me and Luke during our marriage. He helped us out of a jam with the HOA a while back. I'll call him Zach. Now, contrary to some of the comments' suggestions, I cannot just go around town consulting with every lawyer in the area, with the explicit purpose of locking my husband out of hiring them. That is bad faith and judges don't look too kindly on it. However, this was Zach. He had been my attorney, and Luke's, for years. I feel like I had just as much right to him as Luke did. And I got there first. So I was able to nail down our family's lawyer. Met with both him and Paige, and boy howdy, do they not like each other. Zach brought up some of the same problems as some of my comments. He argued that Paige's activity was in the gray area and urged me to hire him to represent me in the divorce instead. That caused a bit of conflict as Paige is explicitly a family attorney and this is her specialization. So I'm going to be consulting both of them from here on out. Zach actually thinks it's a good thing that I made these posts as they can't really do much other than prove my sanity when Luke and Amy try to argue otherwise. Overall, I am doing better. I've been talking to a friend in real life, the mom of one of Sophie's friends. I also have therapy scheduled for myself, and I intend to look into family therapy as well. When my kids ask me what's going on, I simply tell them that their father and I are having adult problems and it's nothing they need to worry about. That worked for about a day. Sophie warned me they were planning to confront me as a group, and they did, asking if Dad had cheated on me with Amy. Obviously they've been talking about this, and perhaps they have been for longer than I had anticipated. Perhaps they've been wondering? Again, even though I had absolute proof, I was hesitant to tell them as much, and let me explain why. I naturally wouldn't tell them about the pornographic content I found. I would simply say that I found messages between Luke and Amy revealing their affair, but, with the exception of Sophie, they wouldn't be satisfied with that. I already know Carter, curious little sweetheart that he is, would want to see these messages. So instead, when I was asked directly by my kids if their dad had cheated on me, I simply said I believe he did, yes. With as much sincerity as I could muster. I think they believe me. Tom and Sophie are texting nonstop and from what I can gather, there's doubt among Amy's children as well, that this is about me losing my mind, and not about their mother being too close to my husband. I think it's slowly sinking in for poor Jim that what he didn't want to believe was possible is very much possible, and it's happening. I haven't shown him or Kat any letters or anything. They're hosting Luke, so I haven't had much of any contact with them at all. But I did have one phone call with Kat where we wished each other well. That was nice. In the background, I could hear shouting and though Kat quickly went outside, I did hear what sounded like Jim shouting at Luke. He doesn't usually shout. He's the calmest man I've ever met, so in a way I'm worried about him but also relieved that the wool is being pulled off of his eyes. According to Kat, Luke is still staunchly denying everything. He was pretty upset when he found out that I had poached Zach though. Which gave me a kind of grim satisfaction. The test results came back. Sophie and Tom tested their DNA against each other to see if they truly are blood siblings. Here's a surprise. According to the test, they're not. They don't share any DNA. To everyone who believed Jim had fathered Amy's babies, here is definitive proof that he did not, because the test would have revealed that too. But I never believed it anyway. Sophie has her doubts and wonders if the results weren't faulty and if we shouldn't take another test to be absolutely certain, but I'm not really worried about that. More confused than anything. I was so certain Tom had to be Luke's son. He was too. Now he doesn't know what to think and I don't either. I obviously now know the affair happened and lasted years, and I know from the letters that Kaylee is Luke's child, or at least both he and Amy seem to believe she is, which confirms they were intimate 15 years ago. Now I'm just wondering for Tom's sake. Who if not Luke is his father? He does kind of look like Luke, but that might just be coincidence. In general, everything was quiet for a few days until it wasn't, until she finally showed her face. My best friend Amy. I am so happy I installed Ring cameras everywhere, as you are about to understand. Sure enough, Amy turned up on my doorstep and asked to talk. She had a relaxed demeanor and did not raise her voice. Assuming she was approaching me on Luke's behalf, I told her that I wasn't interested in talking to her and to just go away. She did not leave, but she didn't make a scene either. She persisted in telling me we needed to have a conversation. The kids weren't home, and did have cameras inside. I was also recording her on my phone and being discreet about it, so eventually I relented and let her in. I don't know if she realized she was on camera. We sat down on the couch, and she instantly got into the reason for her visit. Turns out, she and Luke know, or suspect, that I procured damning material from his laptop. Amy accused me of going through his devices and told me that anything I found was not my business and I needed to delete it. That was all she had to say. No apology, no admission of guilt, didn't take responsibility for her own behavior. Hell, she might have known I was recording her, because she didn't even directly acknowledge what the sensitive material on Luke's laptop actually was. So I confronted her, letting out some of my anger. I asked how she could have the nerve to make demands of me. I asked her why she and Luke would do a thing like this in the first place. Why had they seen fit to spend all these years betraying me? I posed the question that I'd been wondering about for a long time, and as I expected, I got no answer. Literally, Amy didn't seem to really hear me even as I confronted her. She seemed like she was stressed. Panicked even. But she was keeping it under wraps. She ignored my questions and accusations and just kept telling me to delete whatever content from Luke's laptop that I had. She said that if I wanted to divorce Luke, that was my call, but not to drag her into it. Oh, that made me so mad. I kept my temper, but I did snap back that she was already very much in it. Amy just kept repeating herself, telling me to delete whatever I found. So I just refused. I asked her, point blank, why I should. Why did I have any reason to? Amy got more aggressive, raising her voice. She was trying to intimidate me, but I held my ground. She told me that this wasn't about me and that I needed to just do as she said. That it was very important. So I asked again, why? And yet again, she would not answer. So I asked her if Luke had sent her to do this or if she had shown up on her own. No answer to that either. It was like talking to a brick wall. So I asked her to leave. Just as I'd been afraid of, she wouldn't go. She refused to leave until I had deleted everything I'd found in front of her. I couldn't help laughing. I told her no, that wasn't going to happen. This is where I could see her starting to freak out more. In another moment, she got up, ran into the other room, and grabbed my laptop. Before I could stop her, she smashed it on the floor. I really don't know why she thought that would work or get her the outcome she wanted. I think she was just panicking. Obviously, I still have everything, except now I need to buy a new laptop. And sadly, her doing this was out of frame of the camera, but it's fine. All of my important files are backed up, and at that moment I was more concerned that Amy would do something else drastic. She looked like she was going to have a breakdown. I tried again, very calmly, to tell her that she needed to leave or I would call the police. She refused again and just kept repeating her demand that I drop this whole cheating angle and divorce Luke without trying to argue that an affair took place. At that point I just stared at her. At the woman I had considered one of my dearest friends in all the world. And I told her that I didn't owe her anything, but she owed her children the truth. That they had the right to know where they came from. Who Luke really was to them. Amy bristled and told me it was none of my business, that I didn't understand her family and I needed to back off. She kept going back to this idea that I could divorce Luke, but I must not claim he'd had an affair with her. I just told her that I didn't need her permission to handle my divorce how I wanted and told her again to leave. She got more and more desperate, and her anger accelerated to the point that she physically attacked me. I did not expect her to actually do this. I'm not much of a fighter, but I do know the human body pretty well, and where it's weakest. She hurt me pretty badly, but I got her off me. That part was very much on camera, and the whole audio was recorded on my phone. She finally left after that, and I immediately called to file a police report. I had the strangest feeling she'd try something similar and wanted to beat her to the punch. I was able to clean myself up by the time I had to face my kids, and while I downplayed the story, I did not lie to them about why I had a black eye. I told them, for their own safety, to steer clear of Amy. I also sent the footage to Paige and Zach, as well as pictures of my injured state before I cleaned up. They've also printed out the letters that reference Kaylee as Luke's child. I really feel like Amy just screwed herself over on all this. I don't know what her motives were. Was she protecting Luke? Was this his idea? Does she just really not want the world to know she's a homewrecker? Is she covering her own ass? As if people didn't know already. The more of my social circle I talk to, and inform of the basics, the more people confess that they had wondered in the past if Luke wasn't cheating on me, but didn't have any concrete proof. I suppose Amy doesn't want her kids to know who fathered them, which does line up, but I'm still not sure about Tom. I didn't ask Amy about him in particular. I don't know why you guys are so eager for these updates, but I don't mind posting them. I've never blogged about my life before. I'd imagine it feels something like this. Comments. Comment 1. I'm so sorry that she had gone to your home and attacked you. Glad you still have the evidence and didn't back down. I have a feeling that she is wanting you to delete the stuff because maybe your in-laws have threatened to cut her off financially if it is true. Thank you for the update. Hope you're healing. OOP. I could see that being the case. Comment 2. Oh, to be a fly on the wall when Luke finds out that the children he thought were his actually belong to someone else and that his mistress has been cheating on him for years. It would be so, satisfying. He will lose not only his wife and mistress but also some of his children. Not to mention losing the respect of the children he had with you. He's headed straight for the downfall. Comment 3. Ooh, I had not considered this angle. How interesting. Another poster said they thought Amy might be so insistent that she be left out of everything because the in-laws will cut her off. And I still think that's a strong possibility, but even more so if the kids aren't actually Luke's. Comment 4. Sweet life. Amy has bought herself a house with these people's help and receives regular financial support every month. She has hooked a sick man, who struggles to leave the house, according to one of OP's comments, and made him her puppet. Even if Luke suspects something, he can't confront Amy, because if he does, Amy could spill everything. She's been in control of the narrative until now, and suddenly the whole world she's built is going to be turned upside down. I think that's why she's freaking out. There's also being humiliated, yes, but she can always leave the city she lives in. Hell, even the country. But as long as the children are the grandchildren of this rich family. But if they're not, she's fucked. Comment 5. What DNA test did the kids use? That was super fast. Amy sounds like she has mental problems. No accountability for her actions. Zero remorse. No empathy. She thinks she can't do any wrong. Sue her for the laptop and press charges for battery or assault. OOP. Literally just one of the over-the-counter paternity tests you can buy at a drugstore. If it gets to the point of having tests done in court, those are likely to be more reliable. Oh, you read my mind. Kind stranger, that's exactly what I want to do. Laptop is likely to just be a small claims court, but it's another charge on the pile. Karen claims to be the owner's wife in my parents' restaurant and ends up embarrassing herself. I am 18 years old. We offer snacks, cakes, candies, and several fast items in the small restaurant my parents run. Let us just refer to it as Joe's. It was named after my grandparents. Yes, I do pay. Normally, I hang out there with friends to have something whenever I have free time, and this helps them to pay as well. Working at Joe's pays me, especially on the weekends as it gets really busy. I pick orders and assist others with service. We do indeed have staff members. Along with paying me for the hours I work, my dad lets me keep the tip money clients leave after dining. Few of the frequent patrons are aware that my parents, the proprietors, also work there. I am the son of the owner. People commonly confuse them, nevertheless, for employees. One weekend, a woman, probably in her 30s or 40s, entered the restaurant with her bratty child, who appeared to be roughly 13 years old. Given it was the weekend, the place was somewhat packed. She was advised to take a seat on one of the waiting seats. About 20 minutes later, she sat down at a ready table. I went to get her order. I can't precisely recall what she ordered, perhaps a sandwich or something. I handed the order to the kitchen and stood next to the register monitoring whether anyone needed anything. Her bratty child was running around the restaurant, yelling, running over people, treading on their feet, even touching their food. Naturally, the mother seemed unconcerned and preoccupied on her phone. This infuriated me much, hence I grabbed the child by his hand and angrily instructed him not to run in such a strong manner that he started crying and ran back to his mother. Fuming, the mother stripped across to me. The discussion proceeded as follows. "How dare you touch my child?" the entitled mother says. "Me? He was flitting about upsetting other individuals. Surely you noticed he was handling their food." "Well, he's a child," says the entitled mother. "He is free to do as he likes." "Me? Well, yeah, but under my supervision." "Do you even know who I am?" the entitled mother asked. Thinking, asterisk. Here we go again. Knowing what was about to happen, I chose to participate asterisk. "Me? No ma'am, I'm not." Entitled mother. "Well, then you ought to know. I am the owner's wife. You're getting fired, so you made a big mistake and I will make sure your face won't be seen here again." I started to find amusement at this stage. I assumed she would say she was a friend or sister of the owner, but she opted for asterisk wife asterisk, hence now I could have some fun. "Me? Ma'am, I doubt you even know his." She served me. "His name is insert my dad's name here," says entitled mother. She knew my dad's name, which startled me since only a small number of people knew that fact. "Me? Ma'am, please don't get me fired. I'm so sorry I was nasty to your son. I just have this job." Entitled mother. "You should have considered that before you touched my son." "Me? But ma'am, he was frustrating." She once more cut me off. Title mother. "Shut up." She marched across to the cashier and insisted on talking to the manager. Coming out, my dad asked her what was happening. Entitled mother. "Your staff member has been buzzing my son. I want him to be let go right now." I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but I can't just fire him without reason," my dad answered after staring at me then back at her. "Do you even know who you're talking to?" Entitled mother asks. "The owner of Joe's is married to me, hence I find this staff unacceptable." My dad smiled the most of all. Entitled mother. "Why are you laughing?" "I am sincere. Dad, I apologize for any trouble once more. Are you looking for a refund?" The entitled mother entered complete fury mode and exclaimed, "You know what? I'm grumbling about you and your company on my phone to my husband. We'll have you sacked right now." We posted it on a board outside for home delivery orders, hence she picked my dad's phone number. She gave that number a call. My dad's phone rang. Shock rocked Karen, the entitled mother. Taking up the phone he said, "Hello, this is Joe's owner, how could I assist you?" As if all the blood drained from Karen, her face turned from red to absolutely white. "Yes, I am the owner and manager of Joe's and you are not at all my wife," he said. "And my son is the employee you wish sacked." She stared at me, and my laughter started to flow uncontrolled. Her order came ready just then, but by then she was already ashamed enough. Her child was wailing all through the backdrop. We still giggle about her dragging him out by the arm, not following the instructions, and without even taking the order. Man, I find it hard to understand how long OP let this continue before saying anything. He actually had not really needed to say anything at all. She called the number outside and spoke with the owner personally, hence the only reason the entitled mother discovered he was the son of the owner and she was not the wife. She chose the wife role straight ahead instead of other possibilities like OP considered, such as becoming the sister or friend of the owner. She simply asserted, rather boldly, to be the wife of the proprietor. I wouldn't have been able to resist shouting something like, "Mom, you finally came home," remarked one of the funniest remarks, then tried hugging her while faking tears of joy. Following up, someone remarked, "That would be awesome and hilarious. And I have a younger brother as well. Were you expecting Dad when you left? Is he a half-brother?" Better still, the larger the scene is. People begin by pulling out their phones and filming the entire event. Tell me what you would score this entitlement level 1 out of 10 and down below in the comments. Am I the asshole for exposing my dad's girlfriend after she tried to kick me out and faked a pregnancy? I'm M20, and I was a former foster kid. I was never adopted before I aged out, but I was placed with Joe when I was 10, and we were long-term matched by the time I was 14. Joe's the only real family I've ever had, and I consider him my dad. Even though the whole adoption thing never happened. When I first moved in with Joe, he was married, but his wife passed away suddenly when I was 12. That was tough on both of us, but we managed to get through it together. Now, Joe's been dating his current girlfriend, Sarah, for about 2 years. She didn't come over much, and when she did it was pretty brief. But 3 weeks ago she moved into our house because she lost her job and couldn't afford rent anymore. I don't know if she was always like this or if moving in has brought out a different side of her, but Sarah's been acting really strange. Whenever Joe isn't around, she completely ignores me, like, won't even look at me when I speak, won't answer questions, nothing. At first I thought it might be some kind of anxiety thing. But now it started getting worse. For example, when Joe's at work and I'm in the lounge watching a movie, she'll come in and start blasting TikTok on her phone or playing music, totally disregarding the fact that I'm there. When I ask her to turn it down, she just flat out ignores me. And it's not just the ignoring that's the problem. She started saying some pretty nasty stuff about me too. She FaceTimed her friend while I was in the room and talked about how lazy I am and how I don't contribute anything to the household. Yesterday, I was sitting on the sofa watching the new Deadpool movie when she came and sat across from me, FaceTiming her friend again. She started talking about how she and Joe are trying for a baby and how excited they are because neither of them have had children before. Those exact words. It felt like a slap in the face. I know Joe wouldn't have said something like that because he considers me his son. So either she's making it up, or I don't even know what. I haven't told Joe about the things she's been saying to her friend because I don't want to mess up his first real relationship since his wife died. But this situation is seriously eating me up inside. I mentioned the situation to a few people and a couple of them suggested that I secretly record her behavior when Joe isn't around so that he can see what's really going on. It seemed like a good idea at first, but when I talked to one of my close friends about it, he said that secretly recording her could just make things worse. He thinks it might make Joe feel like I'm going behind his back and could cause even more tension, especially if Sarah twists it to make me look bad. So, WABTA, if I secretly recorded her to show Joe what she's really like, or should I just avoid it altogether? I don't want to seem like I'm trying to sabotage his relationship, but I'm not sure what else to do. Relevant comments. November 8485. You need to talk to Joe. You can record it in case he doesn't believe you, but you need to talk to him ASAP. And you might also have to work on your exit plan in case it backfires, which it can. People in love do strange things at times. NTA. OOP. I don't think Joe would ever kick me out, but you're right, I should have a backup plan just in case. Call 20. So many parents kick out kids when a new relationship forms and the kid doesn't get on with the new spouse. Don't be blindsided by something that is a huge possibility. You're an adult. Joe's GF could have the very easy argument that you're an adult and need to move out so they can work on furthering their relationship. Having a child together would absolutely be a reason he would side with her. NTA, out of curiosity, you have only explained that you lounge and watch TV. Are you contributing to the household in any way? If Joe's GF is contributing to the household, I can see why she would have an issue floating with you. OOP, well, I'm still at college. Americans would call this high school. But it's summer. As a foster care leaver, Joe is paid £300 per week by the government to support me until I finish. This will carry on until I finish university or until I'm 25, whichever is first. I also get universal credit, which I use for most of my expenses. OOP goes on to state, high school usually ends at 18 here also, but I've had to redo some learning that I missed. Huge_Lime 826, get your ass off the couch and contribute to the home. Seems to me you are too stupid to realize that he will pick his girlfriend bedmate over a 20-year-old taking up space and pissing off his hot girlfriend. You don't realize it, but unless you start contributing, your days are numbered. So you're off school for the summer. Why don't you have a job to go to every day instead of sitting your ass on the couch? OP, who hurt you? Huge_Lime 826, nobody hurt me. But I did have enough common sense to get my ass off the couch and not play video games as a 20-year-old and then bitch about somebody who actually is contributing to the household. If he doesn't believe the girlfriend is more important to Joe than he has blinders on. Just wait until she has a baby. He needs to wake up and get his ass off the couch and contribute to the family. 20 years old is not a time to be sitting on the couch playing video games to get a job. Automatic_mirror_825. It's time to fly out of the nest, find a job, and/or college. Build your own life. You are an adult, young, male, with lots of opportunities. Sorry_I_guess responding to automatic_mirror_825. This young man didn't have a stable home until he was 10. He went through a traumatic childhood, and his life's trajectory is not the same as most people's, so developmentally it may be important for him to take a little longer to feel safe and confident. Hell, he's still finishing his secondary education due to those complications. And you have literally no idea what opportunities he does or doesn't have. As long as his father is happy to have him there, who are you to tell him he needs to leave home? What a shitty, presumptuous thing to say. Silent Prune 8103. Going to school isn't contributing to the household. Doing chores, taking out the trash, preparing dinner, doing laundry, sweeping the floors, vacuuming, doing repairs around the house. Contributing to the sustainment of your family's home and health of it so it doesn't burden others. That's my responsibility. If she finds herself or Joe doing all of this, then I would be annoyed as well. You're an adult. As an adult, you should be contributing without being told the responsibilities of maintaining the home. I would say getting a job as well at your age. Many folks go to school and have a part-time job, but if that's not the case, you can help around the house. I guarantee if you're doing those things, Joe and possibly her will have a different positive opinion of you. Update. I decided to talk to Joe directly instead of secretly recording Sarah. I thought it would be more mature, sensible, and non-confrontational to handle things face to face. My mindset was that if he didn't take it seriously, then I'd consider recording to show him what was really going on. When Joe got home from work, I asked him to talk privately in my room. He seemed a bit confused at first, but I made it clear that I wasn't trying to sabotage his relationship. I just needed to tell him that some things Sarah was doing were making me uncomfortable. I reminded him about how she ignores me and mentioned how she plays videos while I'm watching TV, but when I told him, she said that he didn't have any children and that they were trying for a baby, he looked really upset. It felt a bit awkward, but Joe called Sarah into the room to talk with us. He asked her if what I said was true and she immediately denied it. You could see from her body language that she was lying. I'm not sure if she just never expected me to say anything about how she's been treating me or what. Joe firmly told her that this is my house, not hers, and that while she's a guest here, she can't be disrespecting me. Things got a little heated, and in the end, she apologized to me, though it was through gritted teeth. I accepted the apology, even though I'm not sure it was genuine. After that, Joe asked if I was still comfortable with her staying with us. I said I was because I didn't want to break them up. I just wanted to tell him what was happening. However, she decided to stay at her friend's house for the night, which made the situation feel even more tense. I can tell Joe is really upset now, and I feel super guilty for making him feel this way. He insists it's not my fault and we ended up having kebabs for tea, but even so, I can't shake the feeling that I've caused a huge fight between them. Joe went to bed early, and now I'm stuck feeling bad about the whole situation. I just hope that whatever happens next, things will settle down. Thank you everyone. Update 2. So, about a month ago, things seemed to be getting better, at least on the surface. Joe and Sarah got back together, and I gave them my blessing because Joe really wanted it to work. Sarah even moved back into the house, and she was actually being decent to me, which was a change. But honestly, I always felt like she was just putting on an act. I had this nagging feeling that she still didn't like me and was only being nice because her other option was to be homeless. It all went downhill really fast though. Less than a week after moving back in, Sarah announced that she was pregnant with Joe's baby. And that's when the real chaos started. She dropped this ultimatum on Joe. Either I move out, or she'd break up with him and make it impossible for him to be involved with the baby. Joe was torn because he didn't want her or the baby to be homeless, but he also made it clear that I wasn't going anywhere. I'm his family, and he wouldn't kick me out for anything. So Joe told Sarah that they'd have to break up for good after she gave him the ultimatum. He even kicked her out again. That's when things got even crazier. Sarah started messaging Joe, saying she was going to get an abortion because she couldn't afford to be pregnant. Joe, being the good guy he is, offered to send her money and even pay for her rent so she wouldn't be homeless, but she kept playing games. Anyway, I was borrowing Joe's iPad one day, and I saw that Sarah's iMessage was still linked to it. I accidentally stumbled across her messages to a friend where she admitted she wasn't pregnant at all. She was just lying to get money from Joe and had this whole plan to drag him along for months before pretending to get an abortion. She even said she was going to make Joe's life miserable because he kicked her out. I felt sick to my stomach reading those messages. I took a screen recording of the entire chat, including the phone numbers and everything so she couldn't deny it or say that it was faked. When I showed Joe, he was completely heartbroken. He's stopped sending her money, but now he's unsure about what to do next. He's even thinking of reporting her to the police for fraud. But part of him just wants to cut her out of his life completely and move on. I've never seen Joe this hurt, and I feel so guilty because I know all of this is stressing him out. I'm still in shock over how horrible Sarah turned out to be. Even with everything that's happened before, I never thought she'd do something this low. Now, we're just trying to figure out how to move forward from all of this. Sister-in-law secretly DNA tested my adopted daughter and accused me of raising an affair baby, so I laughed in her face. Original post, August 29, 2024. When you weigh 30 have a daughter who's 6. I am not biologically related to her at all. There is no blood relation between us. I was friends with her mother for most of my childhood. We were never involved romantically and were always just friends. She had her daughter at 23 with her 25-year-old husband. When my daughter was a newborn, about 3 months technically, both her mother and father were killed. I won't go into too much detail for privacy reasons, but it was a workplace shooting. My friend and her husband had worked in the same building and were both killed. Both my friend and her husband had grown up with less than ideal families and didn't have any siblings, so there wasn't any next of kin for their daughter to go to. However, because I was close with them, I was able to adopt her. Even though I had been iffy about the idea of kids, I didn't want their daughter to grow up in foster care or around people who didn't have a connection to her bio parents, so I stepped in. My parents and siblings know that my daughter is not my actual daughter biologically speaking. My daughter, I'll call Lily for the post, also knows that she's adopted. I never really hid the fact that she was adopted. She knows her parents are dead and were killed by a bad man, but I'm saving the details for when she's older. Lily does not look like me at all. She looks exactly like her mother and biological dad. Most people assume that I'm her bio dad and that she just took after her mom. I don't ever really correct this when and if people assume this because it just seems unnecessary. My brother has been with his fiancée for about 2 years now. A few weeks ago we were all meeting up at my parents' house and my SIL saw an old picture of me, my friend and her husband. She pointed to my friend and asked who she was, and I explained that it was Lily's mother. SIL got quiet and stood in front of the picture for a while. I didn't think much of it. To clarify, she knows my friend died, but I guess didn't know that she had been married, or that Lily is not my bio daughter. I suppose she assumed my daughter was mine and my friend's biological daughter. My SIL got a DNA test done on my daughter behind my back. She used my brother's DNA for the test, and when it came back that they weren't related, she knew that meant me and Lily weren't related. She came up to me with the results and waved them in my face, saying that I was taking care of a dead woman's affair baby. She said this to me in front of my daughter. I just stared at her for a while before bursting out laughing at this. I told her I knew Lily wasn't my biological daughter, and that this thing called adoption exists. Her face went red and she stormed off. My brother is mad. I embarrassed his fiancée, but I said she embarrassed herself by DNA testing a kid that isn't hers and then parading the results up to me. What did she want me to do? What was her goal with this? Did she want me to break down and abandon my daughter? My brother said she thought she was doing the right thing and called me an asshole. I don't feel like the asshole, especially considering my SIL was the one who stuck her nose where it didn't belong. I'm asking for Reddit opinions, mostly just for validation. So was I the asshole? AITA has no consensus bot. OOP was NTA. Did the brother's fiancé assume OOP was married to the deceased friend? Oop, I can see how she assumed that we were together. In the picture I had my arm around her shoulders. This was before my friend was married to her husband. At the time that picture was taken they were just friends. Commenter, I think you're a hero. I'm proud of you. If anything ever happens to me, I know my daughter will be so loved and cared for and raised in a loving household. I hope somehow your friend and Lily's daddy are resting peacefully knowing she's got a papa that loves her. I'm going back to cutting onions now. OP, I appreciate that, a lot. I'm doing my best to raise Lily with the values and beliefs her mother and bio dad had and wanted to raise her with, even if some of them differ a bit from my own. Does OOP know what kind of DNA test Sil took for his daughter? OOP, I believe they were doing one of those home DNA kits, though I don't know what company they did it through. Commenter, NTA, she wanted to stir some shit up, that's a hell of a lot of effort to help. Also, I'd be pissed about how she got Lily's DNA to do this. It didn't go the way she thought it would, so she got mad. Your brother is just trying to side with his soon-to-be wife. Update, August 31st, 2024. TLDR spoiler. My brother thought I had been having an affair with Lily's mom and thought I was Lily's bio dad. He tricked Sil into believing that I was in a relationship with Lily's mom and was Lily's bio dad. Sil then saw the picture of Lily's mom and her husband, and assumed Lily was an affair child between the two of them and was being led on to believe that I was Lily's bio dad. My Sil ended up coming to my house and apologizing, as well as telling me the full story. My brother put her up to the DNA test. When I first adopted Lily, my brother for some reason believed that Lily was my bio daughter. He thought that me and Lily's mom were together and just weren't telling anyone. He believes that when she got pregnant, Lily's mom told me that Lily was mine and that she was going to just say that it was her husband's, and I went along with it because I didn't really want kids. SIL was under the impression I believed I was Lily's bio dad. She saw the picture of Lily's mom and I, and after asking for clarification on who she was, assumed we were together in it, and then got suspicious when she saw that the other guy in the picture, Lily's actual bio dad, looked a lot like Lily. I also want to clarify, I didn't tell her that Lily's bio dad was in the picture because she had specifically pointed to Lily's mom, and I assumed she knew that Lily was adopted. I didn't know my brother had been telling her lies for nearly 2 years. She got the DNA test out of her own suspicions, and my brother helped her with it because he thought it would reveal that I was actually Lily's bio dad. He manipulated her into thinking that it would clear the air of suspicion, when really he was just trying to prove that I was really Lily's bio dad and lying about the reasons for adoption. Well, of course the results proved I wasn't Lily's bio dad and that my brother was wrong. My brother felt too embarrassed to confess to his fiancée that he had lied about the circumstances, which is why Sil confronted me with the results. My SIL also apologized for showing me the results in front of my daughter. She told me that her mom had an affair and cheated on her father, got pregnant with another man's kid, and had let her father believe the kid was his. Her father was devastated by this when he found out, and she grew very resentful of women who do that to their spouses. She had wanted to sit me down and talk to me about it without my daughter, but when she saw me with my daughter she got angry thinking I was being led on to believe I was raising my daughter when I was actually raising another man's kid, and she ended up exploding and immediately waved the results in my face. My SIL does feel very guilty, and she's angry at my brother for lying to her. I'm not angry at her for doing the test, because she thought she was doing the right thing. I also forgave her for the way she told me about the results, because clearly affairs are a sensitive subject for her and I can understand why she would have exploded like that. I'm pretty sure she plans to break up with my brother now, and I don't blame her. When I called and asked my brother about this, he admitted it. When I asked why he would think this, he said that he couldn't think of a reason why a man who had been against having kids at the time would willingly adopt a baby without having a blood connection to it. He told Sil that I was Lily's bio dad and was aware of the fact. He took it a step further, and said that me and Lily's mom were together at the time of Lily's conception. Both me and my parents have been in low contact with my brother for a while now. I know I will forgive my brother eventually, but I can't do that right now. He believed I was low enough to have an affair with a married woman, get her pregnant, take no responsibility, allow her to pass off the kid as another man's, and then only take responsibility because her mom died. Relevant comments. OOP on how Lily is handling all of those. Is she mad at her uncle and his fiancé? OOP. She was confused and I had to explain to her what SIL had said in terms she would understand. She was angry SIL would think that of her mom, and I had to explain that she had been lied to and didn't think that anymore. She's not mad at SIL anymore but doesn't want to ever talk to her uncle again. OOP on fatherhood since adopting Lily. OP. LOL. Yes, I can admit that I'm definitely a lot softer since becoming a father. Adopting my daughter made me have to finally be mature, something I wasn't in my 20s when I adopted her. Commenter. Both your brother and Sil are getting off too lightly. He butted into your family and lied to his wife. And sensitive issue or not, she still violated your daughter's privacy, then called her an affair child derisively in front of her. Commenter. When I asked why he would think this, he said that he couldn't think of a reason why a man who had been against having kids at the time would willingly adopt a baby without having a blood connection to it. Your brother is really showing his whole ass here. Your brother was both a terrible sibling and partner. He riled up his fiancée based on her trauma in order to enlist her to help in deceiving you. Awful. OP, I really want to stress this point, take the words right out my mouth. I'm not mad at my Sil because I know she was manipulated into doing this by my brother. I wish more people could understand that. Update 2. September 8, 2024. Update 2. SIL is now X-Sil. I don't know if multiple updates are allowed for this sub. If not, take this down and I'll post to my profile. Some people were wondering what happened to my brother and Sil. Well, she dumped him. They tried to make it work, but that only lasted a few days and she ended up giving him the ring back. My brother got shit-faced drunk on my front lawn in the middle of the night. I was pissed because Lily had school the next morning and this woke her up. My brother was yelling insults to both me and my daughter. We called the police and he spent the night in jail for drunken disturbance. I believe the official charge was something like that. I sure as hell pressed charges because he was saying some borderline threatening statements to me and my daughter. I don't think it's enough to qualify for a restraining order, but if it is, I'll get a temporary one. On a more positive note, Lily is doing well. She's getting straight A's in even subjects and is excited about her first ever science project. She's been talking my ear off about it. Send help LOL. Comments. Commenter 1. Good for you and your daughter. That was such a violation for you two. Unfortunately, the ex has to deal with her own personal demons. They are both sick. Commenter 2. It's unfortunate that your brother reacted so poorly to the breakup. It's great that you're prioritizing Lily's well-being and ensuring her safety. Hopefully your brother gets the help he needs to deal with his emotions in a healthier way. Dad gave our family business to my lazy brother. He messed up, almost causing a customer to die, and now Dad's begging me to come back and fix it. I, 28F, threw my dad a retirement party somewhat over a month ago. Having maintained our family restaurant for practically his whole life, he was retiring from management. Now, at about 62, he told us he was too exhausted to continue and wanted the company to be passed on to the next generation. Since I had given this restaurant the past 5 years of my life, I very mistakenly assumed he meant me. My family runs 2 other restaurants across the city in addition to an Italian franchise. My uncle runs one, the other is supervised by his daughter. But the most often used branch is ours, and my father is the official owner. For background, my uncle is not really the biological brother of Dad. This all began when my grandfather built his first restaurant, where business first started. Actually, our property is the original one. The restaurant my grandfather opened with my grandmother operated for numerous years until my father assumed control. Then he grew the company by adding 2 other eateries at separate sites. My uncle came in at that point. When we first launched the second restaurant, he left his employment and began working there. His daughter took charge of that place. Since the company has always stayed within the family, when Dad announced his retirement a few weeks before I hosted the celebration, I naturally anticipated him to turn it over to me. Since my uncle wanted to retire in a few years anyway and he is almost the same age as my father, maybe a few years younger, he was not a competitor for the firm. Given my 5-year dedication to the first restaurant, his daughter's 2 years of running the new store represent significantly less experience than I have. I abandoned my corporate job to work with my father ever since I was 23. I wanted to one day inherit the family firm and carry it to unprecedented success. Since I was the strongest applicant to inherit the company, I simply thought it would be me. My cousin was too young and unskilled to manage on her own. My uncle was retiring soon. I knew then it would be me. Though it was somewhat stupid of me not to demand a written agreement, my father never mentioned it straightforwardly. I assumed this was merely understood. Still, at the very last instant my father threw me a curveball. He said on the day of his retirement celebration that my bratty younger brother would be inheriting the company. I have a younger brother and an elder brother. Charles, 34M, my older brother, took the medical route. He is a surgeon and shows no enthusiasm for the restaurant industry. Derek, 26M, my younger brother, spends nothing at all and does nothing all day. Nobody in the family likes him, he is a brat of good value for nothing. Though I have no issue with his lack of talents or his lack of activity all day, I absolutely find his attitude unacceptable. Though he has nothing to show for his life, he behaves as though he is the best and deserves every nice thing that comes his way. Mostly, it's my parents pushing this behavior. Anytime Charles and I try to talk about it, they shut us down and tell us he needs positive support so he could investigate job paths and avoid lifetime freeloading dependent on his parents. A few years ago, he graduated from community college. Since then, he has been let go from at least 5 different companies. He has a major attitude issue so he can never make things stick. Though I'm not sure why he believes this, he feels he is on the same level as God personally and that nobody else can challenge him. We have to put up with it since we are family, but in the actual world, least of all his employers, none would accept this kind of behavior. It is therefore not surprising that he has been let off from every position within a few months. He is not very talented in anything, and even the jobs he worked at were guaranteed by my father via his contacts. For himself, Derek truly cannot accomplish anything. He is simply a huge screw-up and has no idea about his future direction. Since he was let go from his last job 2 years ago, he has been lounging about our house, draining our parents for the past several years. The worst aspect is his lack of any guilt or regret over it. Our parents ignore him and let him live this way instead of intervening, which makes it quite annoying. It is unfair, particularly because Charles and myself were continuously urging us to improve. Not to seem unappreciative, as Charles and I are doing in our life, but it stinks to see them be so forgiving of Derek. Still, I find him to be a somewhat spoiled brat that absolutely bothers me. As children, we were all wonderful friends. But, since high school, things have changed and I hardly get along with Derek in the least. Everyone was rather surprised when my dad said Derek would be inheriting the company as he also lacks knowledge of the company or any notion of how things run. A few months before I organized the celebration, my father had announced his retirement. Everyone knew about it. Family members as well as workers. Having been my father's right-hand man, or lady, in my case, I naturally anticipated to take over after he retired. I regret not having a decent discussion about it. I had taken it for granted, and perhaps that was the reason I came undone. I regarded this as evidence that he was intending to leave me in control, even though he had expressed things about what he wanted me to do once he retired a few times. I trusted my father, therefore I never thought of him maybe not leaving the company to me. He had never offered me a justification not to. Though he handled Derek differently, that did not mean he mistreated me. As an employee as well as a daughter, he was always incredibly caring and polite with me. Still, I decided to throw him a party when he announced his retirement. It never occurred to me that he hadn't revealed who his successor would be, since I simply knew it would be me. I was shocked on the day the party was scheduled when he chose to declare Derek would be taking charge. Not only me, everyone at the party, from my mother herself to all the staff, was in shock. Everyone had assumed I would inherit the company, particularly because I had spent 5 years working at the restaurant striving for perfection. Still, after all of my effort, Derek was scheduled to inherit. I found none of it logical. It didn't really dawn on me until my father brought Derek to his side and he smugly declared he embraced his new post. Tears and total devastation drove me literally from the restaurant. 2 minutes later, my father trailed me outdoors. He wants to clarify that he made this very tough choice for specific reasons. Though I was unhappy, I chose to give him some time. Still, his motives were equally illogical and foolish as his choice. He knew it. He informed me that Derek was really useless and that this affected his decision. Derek had been sitting at home for the past 2 years, while my father had been trying very hard to convince him to go out, hunt for a job, and engage in meaningful life activity. Derek took everything lightly. Now my father reasoned that perhaps placing Derek in a position requiring responsibility, such as running the restaurants, would compel him to rise up and improve his output. Derek's heart wasn't in it, according to my father, because he was working for someone else and lacked an interest in his former employment. However, my father thought Derek would have more of a stake and would be driven to be a better worker since this would be his own business. And if not, at minimum, it would get him out of the home. Then my father informed me that he still wanted me at the restaurant to perform exactly what I used to do for Derek, to be always present for him. He informed me Derek would only be the nominal head. I would be the actual boss. This would, according to my father, inspire Derek to become well. To me, that was quite nasty. Knowing that I was quite capable of doing a far better job than Derek, he expected me to be his shadow and assistant always. I am my own person. I am not the babysitter for my brother. By then, I had worked hard enough to land the job my father had just given Derek. I was still rather offended and not changed even with the justification. I warned my dad he would lose me permanently or he could undo his words and offer me the job he had just granted Derek. I meant it. I had an ultimatum to offer him. Regretfully, we then engaged in a somewhat nasty argument. He informed me I wasn't thinking about my brother's future and I was being selfish and irrational. By not considering mine, he was also acting selfishly, I told him. We found ourselves fighting in this way. Having nothing to say left, I cut him off after that. He refused to hand the job away from Derek to someone who rightly earned it, me. I made up my mind not to return to the restaurant after I felt so degraded. My last day spent there was the day following the retirement celebration. 1 month after that, I still haven't gone back to the restaurant. Though I don't ask about the business, I have stayed in contact with my mother and Charles. They know how things are going, but they also know it bothers me and I don't want to talk about it. I therefore had no idea how the restaurant was performing until a few days ago. Nothing had truly altered on that front as I stopped talking to my father following that argument and avoided Derek anyhow. After leaving the restaurant, I had also begun submitting applications for other employment. Like any other employee, I did get paid for my work there, and I have some money right now to cover temporary needs. I reasoned I could survive off of my funds till I discovered another activity I wanted to engage in. I had even intended to travel next week, but right now I'm not sure since I might have to return to the restaurant. The cause is, like I had anticipated, my brother messed up quite extensively. For some reason, my dad felt it would be a good idea to let him do anything he wanted, without supervision, to inspire confidence in him. He knew nothing about running a restaurant. Apparently, Derek's emotions came before the family business and other pragmatic issues. Derek had been cutting costs on components in addition to making a lot of careless and foolish financial mistakes from the beginning. Now, it's causing them major difficulties. We offer a separate vegan menu and accommodate vegans so that none of non-vegan items come into touch with vegan meals in the kitchen for ethical reasons. We also set aside space specifically for vegan cuisine cooking. But in his infinite wisdom, Derek closed that compartment to create room in the kitchen and began tampering vegan goods in order to save money. This would only be a matter of time before blowback occurred. 2 days ago, the unavoidable happened. Derek had told staff members to use conventional dairy milk wherever they could avoid using the more unsafe higher-priced soy milk. That moron overlooked the fact that some people are really allergic to dairy, not just vegan for fun. You might fairly predict what followed. A client ordered a milk-based dessert and expressly requested soy milk or another milk substitute to be used rather than ordinary dairy. Usually, one of our regular staff members would have used the alternative as asked and disregarded Derek's ludicrous orders. Regretfully, Derek had chosen a fresh, inexperienced man and given him rigorous instructions to document anyone in the kitchen defying his directions. Derek had discovered that the regular staff members were neglecting him since they were too quickly running out of substitute materials. He recruited this new guy as he wanted someone to spy for him. Sadly, this new employee ignored the customer's request and used conventional dairy milk for the dessert following Derek's directions exactly. He did a really poor job with it as well. Things went south rapidly, and the client experienced a strong allergic response. They now seem ready to sue the eatery. I know all of this since my dad contacted me in the evening a few days ago, the day the incident occurred, to let me know what happened. He looked to be panicking. He told me he had sacked Derek right away since he had no idea what Derek had been doing behind his back. He now asked me to return and rejoin him. He was presenting me with the job I had long sought. It was strange that my brother wanted me to come back now, having screwed up just as I had predicted. From the events of 1 month ago, I was still somewhat wounded and disturbed, hence on the phone I laughed heartily at their predicament. I informed him I never would be returning under any conditions. Just as he had embarrassed me at the retirement party, I said that should he truly want me to come back, I anticipated a public apology in front of the family and all the staff. Before handing me the job, I also wanted him to admit his errors and declare he had sacked Derek. Given what happened during the party, I do not believe I was asking for too much. My father's behaviors were just intolerable, and they had severely wounded me. Since now he was the one depending on me, I thought I was merely asking him to make things right. But my mother felt my requests were a bit excessive. During the phone call, even my father claimed he would not be doing any of it. The company was just as much mine as it was his, he informed me. He stated what I was asking of him was ridiculous and humiliating even though he acknowledged he might have made a mistake. So am I the asshole, AITA, for asking my father to publicly apologize if he wants me to rejoin the family company following the choice of my brother to inherit it over me? Update 1. Hi everyone who took the time to comment on my first post and provide suggestions and encouragement first. Thank you very much for your concern on this matter. It truly means a lot to me. Regarding what I decided to do, I gave it some thought over a few days and concluded I would be returning to the company. Though I had to set aside my pride, the decision wasn't simple as at the end of the day, I have spent 5 years of my life at that place. I want to be the one to drive the company ahead, hence nothing else can change that. Given that my dad won't be around permanently, I truly want to see it flourish rather than be closed down. As I have already said, Charles has no interest in the restaurant, and Derek obviously lacks the skills or ability to run a company of that kind. It thus has to be me. It merely does. My uncle and cousin, who oversee the other 2 branches, agreed I should return when I spoke with them. They think that the restaurant is properly mine, hence if my father is asking me to come back, I should put my past behind me and pursue what I love. To be honest, I would have preferred it if my father had publicly apologized, but I don't want to start a public celebration or gloat over Derek being right. That would not make me very happy as compared to the gratification the success of our restaurant will provide. I now understand I have to choose my battles and have opted to let this one pass for my own benefit. I chatted with Dad this morning. That was a highly civil and official exchange. Though we will talk about them eventually, we decided to temporarily keep our history apart for now. Right now, we provide the situation under current utmost attention. To negotiate and get a settlement, we have set up a meeting with our lawyers and the impacted consumer. Out of court, as she has been continuously tweeting about us on social media. She hasn't acquired much traction thus far, so we have been lucky. Nevertheless, this won't be the case for long, hence we must squish this before it becomes too huge. Update 2. After a lengthy period, yesterday I personally met my father. We met before our customers meeting, and one last time we spoke with our lawyer on everything. Seeing him after so long was odd since, 5 years ago, I had seen him practically daily. Until I actually saw him, I had no idea how much I missed him. Since our lawyer handled much of the conversation, we didn't interact much. We had to concentrate on that, but I could see there was still plenty we needed to talk about. Though later we will have to deal with everything, now was not the proper time. Neither has he brought up anything regarding the event from a month ago, nor has he adequately apologized to me. Still, between us things were friendly and civil, which was a comfort because this was our first in-person meeting following our major argument. Though I expected things to be strange, happily they were not. It had been some time, so my father requested me to come home to see my mum after the conference. Since the retirement party, I have not visited home. I had to turn down though, since I had a prior obligation, that of attending an evening engagement party for a buddy. Fascinatingly, when I questioned my dad whether Derek lived at home, he informed me he did not. I really wanted to know where Derek was living and how it came about, but my dad didn't provide any more information and made it plain he didn't want to talk about it. So I stopped there. Later on I spoke with Charles and he informed me that Derek had moved out a few days following his termination, but he was unsure whether our parents had requested him to leave or whether Derek went on his own. Though things remain unknown, I intend to discuss it with my dad and work out what is happening. The client's meeting turned out better than anticipated. Given the situation, I had thought it would be difficult. What transpired was a major ethical transgression and never would have happened if my father or I had been in charge. The consumer, however, was reasonable. She said that the reason she had threatened to sue and complain so much on social media was that the manager had insisted that she was at fault rather than owning the error. She had, he said, not mentioned her dairy allergy or asked for soy milk. The fact that she was blamed when she knew it was not her fault infuriated her the most. Once we knew the whole truth, we knew how much of a moron Derek had been. The client had refused to interact with us prior to this without her lawyer present. She had stated in her social media posts how the management of the restaurant treated her, but she had not gone into great detail since she feared defamation claims. She hadn't completely explained the matter because Derek had got in touch with her accusing her of lying and threatening to sue her. Until now, my dad and I had not known exactly what transpired. The waiter who ordered her sided with Derek since he feared losing his employment. I don't blame him, even if it means covering for their company. These folks need their jobs and are not ready to jeopardize them. Derek, the new guy he hired, never turned on him, hence he also insisted that the server had not been told about the soy milk, which resulted in the ordinary dairy milk being used. Then Derek and the new guy claimed the customer was trying to obtain money from us and lying to discredit the business. We told the client that Derek, the guy in charge, had been let go. So right now, we were running everything ourselves. Nothing like this will never ever happen again, we assured her. Fortunately, we reached an understanding. She agreed to remove her social media entries and let it go. Although we lost quite a lot of money in the process, at least we were able to tidy Derek's mess. My dad and I can at last relax. Update 3. Hi, I have never been happy. I returned to the restaurant a month ago. To be honest, it took me some time to see how unhappy I had been absent from the workplace. Though I have problems with my father, I love this place. I am going to soar to new heights as I wish. Regarding my father, we are working things out and have come quite far. Having spoken with my parents, we as a family have decided we should spend more time together. A few weeks back, after returning to the restaurant, I had a lengthy conversation with my dad. He and my mother said they handled Charles and me poorly. They wanted to develop Derek to a point where he could compete with us and not feel inadequate. They knew he was the weakest link among us. But they raised his ego to an irrational level in doing this. Now, Derek sees the world of himself without really trying to get better. The day my father dismissed him, Derek moved out and shut everyone off since his pride suffered. Later, my dad discovered Derek is working at a nearby video game store and living with a friend. At least he's trying to make it on his own and acting. It's good for him. Every weekend my family gathers for dinner, including Charles and his wife. Derek has been invited multiple times. It would be disrespectful not to, but he has not responded, as asked. It scarcely counts to me since I have nothing to do with him anymore. Though I would like him in my life, I wish him the best. For me, hanging around with my family has been fantastic. I adore it since my father and I are at last returning to a state of normality. Recently, life has been very wonderful. I have no complaints. At last I am creating something I believe in and doing what I love. I am back on good terms with my family and I do not think I could ask for more. All a person truly needs to be happy is that. I found a tampon in my husband's car and another in our bedroom. Our youngster suddenly got new clothes that I didn't buy, so I assumed he was cheating. For 7 years, married for 4, I, 29F, have been with my spouse, 30M. I have never had cause to fear he was even slightly unhappy with our marriage or even disloyal to me. He enjoys making jokes about us still experiencing the honeymoon phase with 2 children in tow almost 5 years. Had it not for the shocking discovery in his car last month, I would not have questioned it or him. I saw something slatted between the cushions when buckling our daughter into her car seat. Pulling it out, I found it to be a tampon. Had I not had an IUD stopping my period for the past year and had not even noticed the wrapper type, this would not have been so strange. When I told my husband where I had found it and why I was almost sure it wasn't mine, he seemed not to know what it was, let alone why I was holding it. He shrugged and said most likely Fiona, his coworker, owned it. My husband often commutes to lunch with his colleagues, and as we live somewhat close to Fiona and her husband, I assumed it was quite likely the tampon had dropped out of her bag either any time he had driven with her or given her a ride. Not particularly significant. I dismissed it until a few weeks later, when we had supper with Fiona and her husband. I had so wanted to believe my husband, yet I couldn't get over the way it had been buried in the seat and how my husband had seemed to have no concern for it whatsoever. Perhaps he was acting stupidly. It's unknown. I did something that, looking back, I find really insane. While we were out together, I staged an emergency and asked Fiona whether she carried any tampons. I sighed with relief when she handed me one nearly exactly like the tampon I had discovered in our back seat. Thus, the tampon there was most likely the same one used here, and most likely, there was an innocent explanation for why it had been placed in the back seat in the first place. Until I discovered another tampon this morning, this time in my sock drawer, I assumed I would have seen the last of the out-of-place feminine hygiene goods. The idea of my husband having an affair makes me physically sick. Even more nauseated the idea that the lady might have left these tampons out for me to find. Should it be my husband's coworker, why would she offer me one the other night and give herself away? Under any other circumstance, I would want to discuss this with my husband. But I feel too ill and ashamed to approach him with what I discovered. What action ought I to take? Comments. I never put a tampon in a sock drawer. I had a period 30 years ago. Trust your gut, then get cameras. Neither does I. I have thought up so many reasons for the tampons that would not point to my spouse, but none of them actually make sense. If it means verifying what I currently suspect, I'm afraid to set up a camera. Has Fiona dropped by your house and had time to plant the tampon? She visited our house numerous times, and vice versa. She wasn't over any time in the past week, hence if she planted that second tampon, she had to have found a window of time when I wasn't home. Every time she and her husband visit, we all stay downstairs. You would have to go rather far to get to our bedroom. That is, past the other bedrooms, around our dogs, over the safety gate. Not saying it's impossible, but on a brief toilet stop it's really difficult. I would guess. Your children's ages are, could they have located a tampon and randomly placed it? 2 and nearly 4. Both have a mischievous streak, hence I didn't want to rule out the chance of one of them shifting stuff around, but I can't see how they could get their hands on 1, maybe 2 odd tampons that I never bought. Update 1. My own hell for the past few weeks has been thinking about every conceivable source of 2 tampons. Nonetheless, I wanted to provide an update. Not long after uploading on here, I told my sister what happened. The tampon from Fiona, my husband's ignorance, the tampon in the back seat and the one in the sock drawer. All the things I suspected but didn't want to accept. The tampons, save from the one I had already thrown away, matched exactly in varying absorbencies. I hadn't left anywhere my husband or daughters would have found them and relocated them. Regarding what they were or where they had come from, my daughters were clueless. With my spouse or without, my sister was sure it was Fiona. She advised asking Fiona and her husband over for our Labor Day barbecue since direct confrontation of either party still sounded like a horrible idea. Sadly, they already had preparations in mind. Our house for any misplaced or foreign items, there were none. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. Watching my husband for any changed behavior, there was none, and even the girls for any new friends they could have met. The final aspect was especially important to my sister's husband, and it helped explain his inclination to think the tampons were safe. Given my husband was the one driving the children to and from daycare and most other activities during the week. If anything had been happening in or around our house, he said it would be almost impossible to keep from me and the girls. That helped me somewhat to feel better. I felt differently only till my younger kid, 2 years old, dropped something down last week. My husband demanded that I continue at work while he stayed home with her, even though I wanted to be the one looking after her. I had no problem with that. At that point, we were all already starting to move past the tampon crisis since my sister and her husband considered it as a positive indication that he would take the time off at short notice. By the 3rd or 4th day, I was merely glad to see a nearly healthy child and a spouse supporting her through it. But towards the conclusion of that week, I returned to find something unusual. Now clad in a onesie I had never seen before, the child I had left that morning in an old PJ set had a small clip in her hair. Though I have a very decent idea of what my children wear on a daily basis, especially in terms of attire, I cannot say I have the best recollection. Before we would have our second, I had vowed off full-length sleep suits with snaps across the front long before. Long snaps are simply a pain in the ass and a no-go for effective diaper changes. Just not something I would dress her in. My hubby knows as much. He definitely doesn't accessorize the girls' clothes and neither does he plan for or buy them. The idea of someone being around our ill child without our awareness confused and rather stunned me. I went straight to inquire whether anyone had been over to visit my spouse or the girls. I didn't second think. Like before, he seemed perplexed and asked me why I would believe that. All day it had been him and the children. Once more, I asked him whether someone had stopped over to say hello. He denied it. I should cool off, he advised. Our oldest daughter was in the room and realized something was wrong, so even if I might have screamed out and came forward with the charges right then and there. My husband swore that the girls had not been with anyone but him. I asked him a third time in a subdued manner if anyone had been near our children. He also denied styling anyone's hair or shopping for new clothing. I chose to leave since our daughter was in the room and my feelings were all over the range. Then I couldn't make sense of it. It hardly looks clearer now after I drove myself mad with illogical arguments. Comments. My 2-year-old can only string a few words at a time to respond to a few inquiries. She responds depending on the cues I provide when I question her about her time with daddy or her wardrobe. I might inquire, "Who gave you that pretty bow?" And she might answer pretty bow back to me, or mama or daddy over and over. Almost 4, my older daughter was in daycare that morning. She cannot remember anything different from that day. Her memory of the PJ change or the hair clip is lacking, hence my estimate is she was changed during that morning, but I'm not sure exactly. My 45-minute trip to work makes stopping for lunch very impractical. My sister has not observed anything unusual. She has been gracious enough to leave work and drive past several times here and there. At the front door is a Ring camera. I have the app on my phone with alerts enabled. Not yet, nothing exists. I'm merely the least tech-savvy person, hence I would be open to suggestions for more covert surveillance, worried another camera will be easy to find. Edit. We indeed routinely test our carbon monoxide detectors. One of the hair clips might have originated from a daycare. Although I could see the hair clip as a possibility, less plausible with the onesie. If either of my younger daughters had returned with something like that before, I would have noticed, especially since it was the kind of onesie I detest with a passion, LOL. She hadn't been to daycare in days. People say they are eager to know how this story ends. The Hollywood horror ending is my financial one. Hopefully, I dreamed about the dogs too so I could at last quit gathering their imagined shits and things. Update 2. I knew I was nowhere with the accusations and half-baked guesses after almost losing my head over a hair clip and a onesie. I wasn't sleeping, eating or taking care of myself the way I should have been since I was so consumed in the paranoia and suffering of my circumstances and I wasn't getting any answers. I thus decided to activate the hidden cameras and have them sent to my sister's house. My brother-in-law agreed to assist with the install/setup at my place. Still, I got my much-needed validation before the cameras were ever delivered. Last week, while I was at work, a Ring alert let me know the motion at the front door. Half expecting to see a delivery person, pet or lawn care salesman for the 15th time, you may picture my astonishment when I watched a footage of a young woman leading my daughter into the house hand in hand with my husband and our other daughter close by. My spouse was at work. The girls were meant to be in childcare. From what I knew, the wife was residing 2 states away under court order keeping her there. I asked my husband straight away what this woman was doing in our house. He ignored me, so I texted him. Knowing I had received the Ring alert, he most likely understood he had messed up by entering the front door and sought to postpone the unavoidable. He was foolish too. But after the 5th or 6th call he at last answered. As I would subsequently learn, the woman on the camera was my husband's sister. She most certainly supplied the bow, the onesie, and the tampons. She is also a recovered addict who spent the better part of her childhood and young adulthood pressuring the silence of another one of my husband's family members following her molestation. She is also a registered sex offender. Years had passed without seeing or hearing from her, and from the way my husband spoke about her, I never expected I would ever would. But here she was, in our house surrounded by our kids. Let me say, I was enraged. Though it was hardly an affair at all, knowing who it was and why all of this had been happening made it much more repulsive. My husband was particularly high on the list since my sister-in-law, fresh out of another stay in recovery, had wanted to rebuild relationships with those she had harmed. My husband had been meeting in secret, usually at our house while I was at work, not wanting me to know, or worse, keep her away from our family and children. They would come in via the garage in my husband's car so the Ring camera at the front entrance wouldn't alert me. She had even stayed in our bed overnight on a weekend when I had gone on a business trip. On a night my husband told me he dropped off our daughters, she watched over them. She bought the girls' clothes and dressed my youngest in the onesie and bow, the identical ones my husband had promised in his life that I had dressed her in myself. My spouse insisted this was all in my head, the tampons, the one piece, the bow, everything else. Shrugging aside each increasingly disturbing revelation like it was news to him and telling me I was being unreasonable, he was quite happy to see me suffer for weeks over a lady he maintained did not exist. 2 years after I had given birth to a child, 4 years after I had told him one of my main worries about parenthood was PPD like my mother had experienced with me. I worried about not being totally present for our children and about having shame and remorse all around as they got older. He advised me to get back off and reassess my mental health. I missed the girls too much and wasn't sleeping enough. Since he was my spouse and since no other way of events made sense, I gave him the benefit of the doubts. After a month of this mental game, I have nothing to show for my trust except this miserable state and a great deal of resentment. Call the cops and a lawyer, comments 1. Reaction. Already on it. We are, believe me, walking burnt ground with this. Twin brothers' lies destroyed my life, my parents kicked me out, and now after years of neglect, they're asking for my money. I'm a 28-year-old female with a twin brother. Growing up, my twin brother and I had quite different treatment from our parents. For some reason, my parents were certain that my brother was destined for greatness, whereas I was labeled the black sheep since I was more interested in sports and making friends than in studying. They continually compared us, which was discouraging and damaged my self-esteem from an early age. As a child, I had to watch my brother have elaborate birthday parties for his pals, while I was treated as an afterthought. He frequently had sleepovers with his pals, whereas I was never allowed to bring my friends home. To be honest, I dreaded every moment of my youth. My grandma was the only person in the family who seemed to care about me. When she came, she always brought me my favorite chocolates and occasionally gave me a few bucks to treat myself later. As the years went, this overt preference for my twin brother evolved into emotional abuse directed at me. My parents would openly insult my academics and activities. No matter how hard I tried, I could never satisfy their expectations of being the ideal child. Although I excelled at athletics, they forbade me from participating in extracurricular activities because they wanted me to concentrate completely on my education, just like my brother. As a child, I felt frustrated and helpless. Later, during my sophomore year, I was grounded again, this time for using Snapchat on my phone. I hadn't done anything wrong, but like all teenagers, I downloaded the app to stay in touch with my friends. However, my parents considered this as a major crime and a violation of trust because they had barred me from talking with my pals. They went crazy, flung all of my belongings around the room, ripped the doors from their hinges, and informed me I would have no privacy as long as I lived under their roof. Watching my parents attack me in this way, my identical brother, rather than sticking up for me, made things worse. Our parents' wrongful acts produced a toxic environment, allowing him to take advantage of the situation. He developed a habit of lying about me, falsely accusing me of things I never did, so he could get away with everything. If he stole something, he'd easily transfer the blame onto me, and my parents, who were already inclined to believe the worst about me, happily accepted his falsehoods. He would insult me in front of my schoolmates and mock my attractiveness. Despite this, I had a large circle of friends at school because I was personable and willing to connect. My twin, on the other hand, suffered socially and disliked the fact that I could interact with others while he, as an introvert, felt uncomfortable. This jealousy boiled over during our 14th birthday party, when none of his buddies came up. I'm not sure why they did that to him, but in stark contrast, my friends treated me to ice cream, and I had a fantastic day. This irritated my brother even more. To get retribution, my brother started spreading false tales about me at school, depicting me as a spoiled brat. He falsely accused me of physically assaulting him at home since our parents loved him more. He escalated the situation without my knowledge. To fake proof, he would punch himself, causing injuries such as a black eye or a bruised shoulder. The next day, he would boldly stroll into school, exhibiting his self-inflicted injuries as proof of my alleged assault and fabricating stories. When our parents questioned him about the injuries, he would lie, claiming that they were the result of innocent activities such as playing football with friends. The lies and his supposed black eyes gained traction, and many began to believe his twisted account of events. It didn't take long for whispers to spread, and my friends began to look at me suspiciously. At first, I noticed minor changes. Friends who used to converse with me in the halls seemed distant, and invites to group hangouts grew fewer and farther between. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and people were unwilling to engage with the allegedly pampered girl charged with violence. One day, I got the confidence to ask my ex-best friend what had happened between us. She said that my twin brother had been circulating falsehoods about me. She disclosed the specifics of the lies he had told everyone, accusing me of actions I had never committed. I was stunned to hear her remarks. The emotion was a combination of incredulity and betrayal, as if the ground beneath me had given way. My brother, whom I grew up with, was spreading lies about me, accusing me of things I would never even consider committing. It was a betrayal that struck deep, leaving me with a knot in my stomach and a sorrowful heart. I addressed my brother the following day at school, but he chose to ignore me. I begged him to stop lying about me, but he smirked and said I deserved to die alone. I was at a loss for words since his lies and actions were beginning to frighten me. I wanted to talk to my parents, but I was frightened they would believe my brother instead of me. Isolation stung, especially since I had always been open to establishing friends. My brother's jealousy-fueled lies seemed to be breaking apart the bonds I'd made over the years. The rumors spread among teachers as well. It was a weird sensation, as if I were living in a parallel realm where my genuine self was obscured by the wicked fiction told by my own twin. The lies had progressed beyond typical teenage chatter. They were now influencing how others regarded me. The unpleasant whispers swiftly reached my principal's ears, and my worst nightmare became reality. The principal summoned me and my brother, along with our parents, to his office to discuss the purported rumors. I sat there, my heart racing, as the principal demanded the truth. I believed my brother would finally come clean, but he doubled down on his lies. He told the principal that the reports were real and depicted me as a bully who beat him up when our parents were not around. I could not believe it. Shock rushed over me as my brother continued to tell this twisted story about how I was furious at him for receiving more attention from our parents. He held to his story like a glue, despite the fact that it was all lies. After hearing my brother's story, my mother burst into tears and clutched him like he was a hero. My father tried to console my brother, assuring him that it was brave of him to speak up and that he would ensure that nothing bad happened to him. Following that day, I attempted to defend myself, arguing with the principal that everything was fabricated. I felt as if I was drowning in a sea of accusations, desperately trying to get to the top, but my brother persisted, saying that I was this furious, violent person who took out my emotions on him every day. My mother's tears flowed as she grabbed onto my brother and gave me accusing stares. It was like fighting against a wall of belief in my brother's fabricated story. My principal sharply chastised me, stating that the school did not accept bullying and that these were grounds for suspension. I begged him not to suspend me, but he shook his head, saying he couldn't simply let it go. I implored him, tears flowing down my cheeks, attempting to explain that I hadn't done anything to my brother. The principal sternly informed me that I would be suspended for 10 days so that others would not bully anyone. It hit me hard, and I began crying even more, virtually asking him to reconsider. My parents, outraged and embarrassed by the incident, hauled me out of the principal's office. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to argue my case and make them understand, but they weren't having it. We left the school, my heart full of frustration and embarrassment. When we came home, things changed drastically. My father started packing my belongings out of the blue. I was stunned, perplexed, and had no idea what was going on. My mother asked him what he was doing, but he simply yelled that he couldn't allow me live in the same house as my brother anymore. I was crying, virtually on my knees, and begged my brother to give them the truth, but he remained cool, unmoved by my feelings. My father kept packing my belongings before throwing the bag into our foyer. I clung to my father's legs, asking him not to kick me away. It felt as if a nightmare were happening. He informed me that a bully like me did not deserve to reside in his home and that he would call his mother, my grandmother, to come and pick me up if she wished. It felt as if the world had collapsed beneath me. I stood there in amazement, surrounded by my stuff scattered over the foyer, booted out of my own home. Eventually, my grandmother showed up. She helped me grab all of my belongings and load them into the car. She helped me into the passenger seat and made sure I was wearing my seatbelt before strolling towards my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell, and when my father opened it, she began yelling at him for treating me this way. With firm determination, she informed him that if he ever approached or attempted to contact me again, she would not hesitate to call the police or CPS, because what he had done to a youngster like me might land him in jail. My mother attempted to shift blame by telling her that it was my fault. However, my grandmother was having none of it. She stood firm, defending me and emphasized that I was only a child and did not deserve to be treated in such a harsh manner. That was the first time I realized how powerful my grandmother was. She did not cower before my parents, and unlike them, she trusted me. We eventually drove away, leaving behind my house, the only place I had ever grown up. I can't even begin to describe how excruciatingly painful I felt at the time. I recall crying on the bed and refusing to eat anything, despite my grandmother's insistence. When I informed her what my brother had done, she was astonished as well. She told me that she trusted my version of the story, and I was relieved that I had at least one person on my side. When the 10-day suspension was removed, returning to school was like going back into the lion's lair. As I entered the familiar hallways, my classmates' expressions told volumes. Judgment, murmurs, and sidelong stares. The weight of the bogus charges remained in the air. Meanwhile, my brother shamelessly ignored me and like I didn't exist. He had made friends with a few people who believed his version of the tale and saw him as the victim of my attacks. I tried to tell everyone my side of the tale, but it went unheard. I was an outsider, saddled with an unfair reputation that stuck to me like a shadow. No matter where I went, the classroom, the cafeteria, or the corridors, the eyes that met mine were filled with contempt and suspicion. I became a loner. I would keep my head down, attend all of my lessons, eat lunch alone in the cafeteria, and then return home. I didn't have any friends, and it seemed like no one wanted me there. Throughout this, my parents never called to check on me. My grandmother would continuously remind me that this was not my fault and that things would eventually be fine. I graduated from high school with good grades and was looking forward to attending college, where I hoped to have a better life. It wasn't until I went away to college that I discovered what freedom felt like. For the first time, no one was looking over my shoulder, comparing my grades, or attempting to compete with me. I met and became friends with folks who shared my interests. Despite the mental and physical scars left by my family and classmates over the years, I focused on putting it all behind me and making the most of my college experience. During this period, I realized I had an aptitude for content writing. I'd always wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't sure if it would work out in the long run. As a result, I chose to give up on my dream. However, in order to supplement my income, I began working as a freelance writer. I signed up for several freelancing websites, which helped me get tasks from well-known companies. This is how I progressively began to compile a portfolio of my work. Throughout college, I maintained my side hustle and never asked my parents for a penny. When I finished college, instead of taking a corporate job, I realized I could work full-time as a content writer. I was doing well since I had numerous clients and long-term professional ties with them, allowing me to work on multiple projects. Having a respectable freelancing business not only gave me financial independence, but it also enabled me to explore the world as a digital nomad. Traveling helped me heal from my past, even if it was not easy. I saved as much money as I could and took a gamble on myself. I've seen a lot of the world over the years, but there's always so much more to see. My grandma was the only person I considered family throughout all of this, and I cherished her. She was quite unhappy when I moved out, but she knew that I needed to be self-sufficient. Despite my tight schedule, I made it a point to be available for her whenever possible. On weekends, I would pay Mom a visit, frequently eating meals or simply sitting on the porch, absorbed in chats about everything from childhood memories to current events. On weekends, I would spend full days assisting her with household tasks or taking her to the neighboring park for a leisurely walk. I recently completed one of the most important assignments of my career. While I can't reveal the name, I was extraordinarily fortunate to write articles and product descriptions for them. After the job was completed, I asked the team I worked with to submit great evaluations on my websites, which they were delighted to do. I grabbed screenshots of several of their evaluations and shared them on Instagram, understanding that collaborating with this brand was a big deal. As expected, several other content writers congratulated me on my professional accomplishments, and some even reprinted my article to help get the word out. This is how I began receiving messages from strangers who also wanted assistance with their websites. My family observed this as well, and some contacted me to express their congratulations. My college's principal eventually called me, seeing that I was doing well and inviting me to come to the college for a seminar to talk to students about starting a career as a content writer. I was apprehensive because I'm not good at public speaking, but I decided to take a chance and consented. When I found myself standing in front of expectant faces, sharing my experiences and insights, I felt as if my life had gone full circle. In my speech, I discussed my hardships and how I pushed hard to keep going despite the difficult times. It was a truly rewarding experience to encourage others and contribute to the growth of the writing community. Some of my videos went viral on Facebook as people connected with them. It felt fantastic to be finally recognized for my efforts. Last week, I was asked to talk on a local news program. It was a show about the benefits of content creation, and they asked me to share my experiences and insights with their audience. I was nervous, but yet excited about the prospect. During the event, I discussed my experiences, the value of customer feedback, and how a simple appreciation message may lead to fantastic opportunities. The opportunity to reach a larger audience and encourage more professionals in the area was both humbling and exciting. When it finally aired, I uploaded some of these snippets on Instagram since I was honored to be invited to a TV show. This is how my relatives and cousins first learned about my professional accomplishments. Because my parents never mentioned me to anyone, they had no idea I was working with well-known brands and appearing on television shows. This is how word swiftly went among my family. I guess this TV interview must have finally reached my parents' ears, because just a few days later, I was working on another project while keeping my phone on mute. When I finished my work, I checked my phone and was surprised to find 6 missed calls from my mother. I was astonished to see her name on my phone because it had been a long time since she had phoned me. After so many years of stillness, I couldn't understand why she was phoning. I hesitantly called her back, and she answered right away. I asked her if everything was fine, and my mother began to congratulate me. My father, who was most likely sitting directly next to her, also joined in on the chat. He began to probe about my life and well-being, and I responded without much thinking. It didn't strike me as weird until they asked how much I was making these days. I explained that it was none of their business. My father answered, "We're family, so don't be shy about telling us your income." I assured him that I was doing well financially. Hearing this, my mother proceeded to describe how difficult their life was these days, and my brow furrowed in suspicion. Basically, this is how our talk went. "Mom, we're retired now, and we've wanted to renovate the house for a while. It's not in great shape, but we don't have any funds left." Me, "Okay." Mom said, "Your achievement has given us hope. We saw your TV interview today and thought you might be able to assist us out by paying for the improvements. Dad, after all, we are a family. Please do not hesitate to share some of your revenue with us. We genuinely need your help." Me, "Are you kidding me? Why are you asking for money when you haven't even spoken to me in years? I'm not sure what prompted you to contact me, and while I appreciate your congratulations, I won't be able to assist you." Hearing this, my mother began telling me that I was being selfish and that I needed to support them as a family. My father emphasized that as my parents, they deserved to be cared for, and that this was the least I could do. I was so angry at this point that I wanted to tell them off. Suddenly, I had an idea. Instead of simply disagreeing with them, I would teach them a lesson once and for all for thinking they could mooch off of me. After my parents mistreated me for so many years, I told them that I was willing to help them provided they agreed to my demands. My father was curious and asked me what it was. Without hesitation, I made my demand. If they wanted my assistance, they had to openly confess, in front of our family and friends, that my brother was the mastermind behind the false stories that had harmed my reputation. I wanted them to embarrass my brother in front of everyone, just like they had humiliated me by believing his lies and manipulations. I wanted them to accept responsibility for their acts and recognize the anguish they had caused. Hearing about my untenable state, my father began to question the necessity of such an admission. My mother told me that this was all unnecessary and that we could have a private discussion without engaging others, but I stood firm. This was a non-negotiable requirement for any further aid they wanted me to provide. As the tension rose, my father raised his voice, establishing his authority as my father, and began to underline that it was my responsibility to assist my family in need. My mother, in a last-ditch effort, persuaded me to do the right thing and assist them, citing the years they had spent raising me. I couldn't help but see the irony in their sudden attractiveness. I reminded them of the past, that they had kicked me out, and that my grandmother, not them, had reared me. They became increasingly angry, but I told them unequivocally that if they wanted to approach me and request financial aid, the truth had to be acknowledged publicly, and my brother had to face the consequences of his conduct. Since this talk, my parents have been calling me often, but I'm ignoring them. I'm beginning to regret even phoning them back that day. I'd like to know if I'd be a complete idiot if I didn't aid my parents. Update. It's been a crazy week since I last shared my story, and the outpouring of support and encouragement has been astounding. It's encouraging to know that I'm not alone at this moment. I'm happy everyone believes that I shouldn't interact with my parents or even contemplate assisting them after everything they've put me through. I gave them such a requirement since I knew they would be unable to comply. I know they love my brother too much, and even if they've realized by now that it was all his lies, I know they'll never put him through what they did to me. My brother sent me a nasty text message today after my parents tried to call me again and I refused to answer. This is what he wrote. Hey sis, I haven't seen you in a long time. And I can tell you that every day without you has been wonderful. I heard mom and dad contacted you and you offered them a strange ultimatum. You're aware that they will never go through with it, right? They plainly never loved you and will never hurt me. I admit I lied about you 15 years ago, but it's been a long time, so stop being so self-centered and attempt to move on from the past. You're unmarried and childless, so why not help them out by paying for their home repairs and renovations? Do the right thing and become a better daughter. Seeing the message felt like a stab in the chest. The hubris to reject the difficulties I had encountered and the conditions I had established revealed his lack of empathy. The attempt to guilt-trip me by emphasizing my single and childless situation added an extra degree of insensitivity. His idea that I should prioritize their needs over my own was not only disrespectful, but also demonstrated how little he valued me. Fueled by dissatisfaction and a strong desire for justice, I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands and expose the truth that had been buried for far too long. I sat down to compose an email to my parents and close relatives, detailing the traumatic events of my upbringing and the unfair treatment I had received while growing up in my family home. In the email, I highlighted the tight and restrictive environment I encountered at home, as well as how my parents treated me differently from my twin brother. I also looked into the spiteful and utterly false rumor my brother had circulated about me at school, which had resulted in serious consequences and ruined my image. I wrote about how my parents had kicked me out and if it hadn't been for my grandmother, I could have died on the streets by now. Toward the conclusion, I requested that everyone read a message my brother had sent me. I've enclosed a screenshot in which he acknowledged lying about me. It was a simple confession, and I hoped it would reveal the lies that had lasted for too long. I sent the email just an hour ago, and I know what will happen when my parents and brother see it. Next, I'll let you know how my family reacts to my email. Update. It's been a month since my previous update, and a lot has happened. As you may guess, my family erupted when they received the email. My parents have faced criticism from relatives who were previously unaware of the extent of their favoritism and emotional abuse. Many family members contacted me, saying they had no idea about everything and apologized for not being there for me. My brother and dad sent me a bombardment of text messages that became increasingly hostile and aggressive. So I contacted a lawyer, who issued them a cease and desist notice. It basically told them not to approach me again, and if they did, they would face severe legal penalties. I guess this spooked them since they stopped calling me. My grandmother believes I did the right thing by telling everyone what occurred, and she fully supports me. She is the only person who is important to me, therefore I'm delighted she has my back. Update. It's been 2 months since my last post, and I'm pleased to say that everything is going well in my life right now. Professionally, my article writing business has thrived. Invitations to speak at seminars and podcasts continue to come in, confirming my status as a renowned expert in my field. I'm as close to my granny as ever. I recently took a 1-week sabbatical from work to spend quality time with her. She is into gardening these days and has taught me a lot about the many flowers and herbs in her yard. My favorite and most cherished memories are of spending time with her, whether we were sharing meals, having profound conversations, or simply enjoying one another's company. My family hasn't contacted me since they received the letter from my lawyer, so I'm glad they're staying away. Personally, I've started attending to therapy in the hopes of working on my own recovery. For the time being, I believe this is the final update. Thank you very much for your support. My parents believed a girl's false accusation and hurt my brother. I escaped a toxic home and fought for custody to live with my brother. I, 14M, have wanted to tell this story for a long time. Please be patient as this is a long narrative. I understand it sounds like a lie, but believe me, I want it to be. This has damaged my family, and I am not permitted to discuss it since my parents want to forget what they did. So, just to be safe, I'm sharing this from my friend's brother's Reddit account. My parents had both lost spouses before meeting. My father split from my older sister Lucy's mother, now 25 years old, and my mother lost her ex-husband in a vehicle accident, forcing her to care for my brother, currently 23 years old. They were both single parents with custody of their children. They met on the beach, exchanged numbers, began dating and were married 2 years later. Let's get into the story. It all began when I was 8 years old and my brothers were 17 and 19. My brother Kirby was in his 3rd year of high school and my sister worked at a grocery store near our home. My parents and sister worked, so I stayed with Kirby. It may seem strange, but the best times of my life occurred when Kirby was with me. I understand that many older brothers do not get along with their younger siblings, but this was not the case for us. I loved Kirby with all my heart, and I know he loved me as well. He always looked after me, played with me, studied with me, and occasionally took the blame for me. One day after school, I waited for Kirby in front of my school. He often came to pick me up because our schools were close. But this time was different. He did not arrive. I waited until 4 p.m., when my sister arrived to pick me up. I asked about my brother, but she didn't respond. She simply dodged the conversation. When we got home, I was stunned by the sound of things breaking in the house and my parents' terrified shouts. When we entered the house, the situation could not have been worse. Kirby was on the floor while my father kicked and threw dishes at him, and my mother screamed horrific words at him. I was so terrified that I refused to leave my sister's side. She escorted me upstairs and instructed me not to leave the room till further notice. I remained there, listening and crying. I had never seen my family like that before, and I am still terrified of them, no matter how old I am. Suddenly, I heard sirens. When I peeked out the window, I noticed 2 vehicles and numerous police officers exiting and entering the residence. A short while later, I heard more shouts and the voice of an officer proclaiming an arrest. I witnessed my father and mother being forced into a police van. My parents screamed and cursed at my brother. At 2:04, my parents screamed nasty things at my brother, calling him a disgusting worm who deserved to die. My mother has always agreed. I went downstairs after they were put in the car at 2:10 p.m., and it was terrifying. Lucy was crying on the floor as Kirby held her in his arms. He was thoroughly bloodied and bruised. After that scene, everything was a blur. I only recall being inside an ambulance in the hospital. It was more like a dream, but my sister disagrees, claiming it was a nightmare and the worst day of her life. About 3 days later, my parents were still in jail for assault and attempted murder. So my sister took a few days off to care for me. Finally, I mustered the confidence to ask my sister what had transpired. Lucy, the first person to ever treat me as an adult, told me the truth. Our brother Kirby was accused of rape by a girl in high school. The girl went to the principal, crying and battered, and accused Kirby of abusing her. Our parents and the girl's parents were summoned to school, and the police were also engaged. Kirby explained to our parents that he did not do that, but they refused to listen and instead supported the girl. So when the police stated they would investigate and do tests, Kirby and the daughter were free to return home. Then something happened. My brother is now in the hospital and he is at risk of developing serious physical difficulties as a result of the abuse. The next day, the police summoned my sister to the police station, where she was required to accompany me. But what they told us was alarming, to say the least. Karen appears to be the girl who filed the report. Karen, if you see this, please know that you are the most horrible person I know. I hope you burn in hell, bastard. You have devastated our life. You filed a bogus report since she and Kirby despised each other at school. And after another fight between the two, she injured herself and planned to claim he hit her. However, the plot evolved to a rape in the hopes that she might expel my brother from school. However, she made a mistake and told her pals about it on a video call, causing them to chuckle. What she didn't expect was for everyone to turn against her, with the exception of her best friend, who had been sexually abused as a child and was never believed until lately. Karen's former closest friend went to the police station, told them everything, and managed to videotape some of the conversation. After the piranha confessed, the cops questioned Karen. And for fear of being arrested, she spoke the truth. My sister was pissed off. She wanted to kill Karen at the time, but the police talked her down, telling her that Karen's parents would have to pay a fee for the false charge and defamation. My sister thought it was fine, but not sufficient. When we returned home, our parents were present. And as soon as my sister spotted them, she exploded, shouting about everything that had transpired at the police station. They listened in silence, becoming more startled with each sentence. My mother was already in tears by the time my sister finished, and my body remained paralyzed. Then he did the worst thing. He said, "Are you sure about this?" That was the worst use of words I've ever heard. Lucy delivered a lengthy lecture on how they were awful parents for believing in that circumstance without any proof. And my father tried to rationalize that the girl's words were really valuable. But my sister did not contest it, claiming that without evidence, words were meaningless. I understand that many raped persons are labeled as liars when their allegations are unproven, but this instance is different. Karen lied and fooled everyone for petty reasons. I hope you can understand. My father was defeated and the home was silent for several days. It was not the same without Kirby. He was the soul of the house. He was kind and friendly to practically everyone. He always provided us joy. I still don't understand how my folks were so easily seduced by Karen. I despise them for that, and I will never forgive them for their actions. Kirby awoke after a long time, only to find himself in horrible health. To give you an idea, his jaw was fractured, he lost 60% vision in one eye, his arm and wrist were broken, his ribs were severely wounded, and he narrowly avoided puncturing his lung. His leg was so severely wounded that he would never be able to walk normally again without assistance. It also caused him to experience post-traumatic stress disorder, sadness, and anxiety. My brother was never the same. He is still in serious pain and requires a lot of controlled medicine. He didn't talk for weeks, and when he took out the gadget that held his jaw in place, it didn't change much. He only responded when we asked a question. When he was hungry, he didn't say anything and he frequently burst into tears. I believe it was due to the trauma. I wanted to hug him, but his injuries were so terrible that it was dangerous. My parents tried to visit my brother several times. My mother begged and my father tried to push us to accept them. But my sister prohibited them since she knew my brother didn't want to see our parents. And she told them that, but it wasn't sufficient. My mother was unable to visit him one day due to work, but my parents viewed this as a chance to pay my brother a secret visit. I believe their thoughts would be something like this. Let's go see our son, apologize, he accepts, we'll be fine, and we'll be one big happy family again. What a big mistake. As soon as they entered the room, my brother let out the biggest scream I'd ever heard from him. Soon, physicians and nurses entered the room to try to calm my brother down. He commanded, "Get them out of here. They're murderers. They have come to kill me. Please take them out of here," Kirby yelled out, and then fainted out from tension. Of course, following that, my parents were banned and barred from visiting Kirby. Only my sister and I were allowed to see him. My mother sobbed all night and my father blamed our brother, claiming he was exaggerating. Kirby was released from the hospital after months of physical and mental recuperation. My parents had the guts to invite him home. However, Kirby replied, "I would not return to this house even if it were the last location on earth. I am now motherless. I hope you both pay for what you've done to me." Kirby moved to live with his paternal grandparents, who had no idea of the circumstances before then. They took preventive precautions against our parents. He welcomed my sister and me to visit him at any time, and we did. In fact, I spent more time with him than my parents at home. The final straw came during a family party, when we discovered that my father had lied to our entire family. He informed them that Kirby had dropped out of school to live in a drug-infested environment and had fled home, taking his belongings and the money they were saving for my college. But my parents didn't earn that money. Kirby and Lucy were the ones who raised it for my tuition. Kirby had done several odd jobs and was now saving because he believed I deserved a better future. My sister and I were furious. We informed our family the whole truth and they were startled and unhappy with our parents. My paternal grandparents were the only ones who supported my parents, saying, "It's human to err," and that they had done nothing wrong. They claimed my parents were simply ashamed of their deeds. But no one else agreed. The rest of the family left my parents and proceeded to apologize to Kirby. Fun fact, the next day, Kirby contacted me, perplexed. He wondered why folks he hadn't spoken with in months suddenly came to apologize to him. Karen's parents arrived at our home a year after the incident occurred. They inquired whether Kirby was home, and when we responded no, they apologized for what had transpired before leaving. Later I learned that they had come to offer Kirby compensation, giving him all of the money intended for Karen's college and automobile. My brother thanked them but stated, "I haven't forgiven Karen and never will. If she ever appears in front of me, I'll tell her some unpleasant realities." Karen's parents accepted his statement and departed. My older brother is doing much better right now, although he is still not completely cured. He still has nightmares about that day, which regularly trigger anxiety attacks. Someone should go to him and calm him down. I want to be there for him, help him, and get away from the toxic world we live in. That is why I have opted to move in with Kirby initially. I spoke with my brother. He was hesitant at first, but eventually accepted the idea and told his grandparents, who consented. I also chatted with Lucy, who felt it was an excellent idea. However, when I spoke with my parents, the tale was completely different. My mother burst into tears, and my father got hysterical, claiming that everyone had already abandoned them and that his youngest son would do the same. I became upset and informed him that I had already abandoned him that fateful afternoon and that he would never accept me back. My father, a guy in his 50s who had always said that sobbing was for sissies, began wailing like a baby. He explained that he had already lost everything and did not want to lose me as well. I couldn't bear the situation, so I left the house and went to a friend's house to vent. My friend admonished me, telling me that I shouldn't forsake my parents like that. His older brother, Steve, the creator of this Reddit account, interfered and begged him to quiet up, claiming he knew nothing. Steve informed me his brother had a poor mind and pushed me to seek further viewpoints. He introduced me to Reddit and suggested that I post my question here. So gentlemen, what should I do? Update 1. Well, a lot has happened since my initial post here. I had a question, but I'd like to thank everyone for helping me make up my mind. Thank you so much for your encouraging words, and thank you to Steve, the owner of this account, for his support as well. Let's get started. I ended up fleeing my home since my parents banned me from leaving. I waited until they went together to go shopping, something they frequently did without me because they treated me like a child and assumed I'd just beg them to purchase stuff. However, this time, they pushed me to join them, which threw off my plans. I opted to pack the essentials in a backpack, along with some snacks to keep me going. As soon as we were to the market, I wanted to use the restroom. Fortunately, my parents were so preoccupied with how the price of food had risen that my father simply instructed me to leave and return shortly. Plot twist, I did not come back. I dashed out of the market and boarded the bus closest to Kirby's grandparents' home. When I arrived, Kirby's grandma welcomed me and encouraged me to relax while I waited for Kirby and his grandfather to return home. When they arrived, I informed them what had transpired, including what I had posted on Reddit. My brother's reaction was not what I was expecting. He stated it was highly irresponsible of me to flee, that it was risky, and that something terrible could have happened. It may sound strange, but I enjoy it when he scolds me. Unlike our parents, he genuinely cares about me. I could be gone for 3 days and they would not notice. In truth, it had happened previously. They simply became enraged when they discovered this. I took the scolding well and asked if I could stay. My sibling commented, "You will come back here even if I send you back to their house, so you better stay." I was overjoyed and hugged him. His grandparents were likewise thrilled with my brother's decision, but my elation faded when he said that I would have to contact my parents. I resisted, knowing they would come for me, but my brother insisted, saying, "They are responsible for you, and if you don't tell them they can call the police and claim that I kidnapped you and am holding you hostage." I hesitantly called my mother. She barely responded before she began yelling at me and asked where I was. When I told her, they became even angrier, ranting in such a harsh alien tone that everyone around me could hear. I could have stood there and listened to them yell, but I hung up when I noticed Kirby was becoming uncomfortable. Following the aggression, he developed a sensitivity to yelling. He cursed his parents for what they had done to him. I became enraged and threatened to take me by force, but my brother responded, "They are aggressive but not idiots. They are aware that I have a protective order against them. If they approach, we'll call the cops." How mistaken he was. An hour and a half later, they were knocking on the front door, yelling and screaming at my brother for future generations. Kirby's grandparents urged them to leave or they'd contact the cops. This simply made them angry, so they returned to hammering on the door. I wanted to walk down and tell them to go, but Kirby needed me. I had to pull him back because he wanted to confront them and express his fury in person. He harbors a lot of resentment towards them. He even stated once that he intended to kill them slowly and horribly. I agree with the sentiment, but I do not believe he should get his hands filthy with them. Then they burst down the door and began wrecking the house in search of me. At that point, I decided to go downstairs and dismiss them. I was trying to calm my brother down by asking him to stay in the room while I handled the problem. My mother let out the greatest scream I'd ever heard, and my father went silent. After persuading my brother to remain in the room, I went downstairs, and the situation could not have been more gloomy. My father was sprawled on the floor, shivering, while my mother stood over him, screaming and calling out to him in vain. I noticed that Kirby's grandfather was clutching a taser. I believe we all know what occurred, right? When my mother saw me, she screamed, "Look what they did to your father, call the police. They should be arrested." I replied that if I called the police, she and my father would be arrested for violating the protective order. She ignored me and kept screaming, insisting that we call an ambulance for my father. We disregarded her, suggesting that once my father healed they should leave and never return. When my father finally returned to his senses, he was unusually silent, defeated and beaten. My brother quickly appeared downstairs. My mother instantly assaulted him verbally, resulting in a heated argument. She began blaming him for everything, claiming he was the reason all of our family had abandoned her and that her children had turned their backs on her. She blamed herself, claiming that she was an innocent woman who went to church every Sunday and did not deserve to go through this. I'm not sure what she meant by it. Nobody would feel sorry for her simply because of that. Kirby remained mute throughout her screaming crises, but she eventually crossed the line. She stated that he was meant to apologize to them for destroying their lives and inform everyone in the family that he had forgiven them. That was the limit. Kirby, furious, slapped her so hard that she tumbled on the ground. My mother began screaming again, but Kirby told her to stop or he would crush her teeth with the base of the cane. He screamed, letting out everything he'd been holding in for years, how unhappy they were, how they dug their own graves, and how they didn't deserve anyone around them. He further stated that when they died, he would make a point of peeing on their coffins. My mother became enraged and attempted to punch Kirby, but I shoved her against the wall. She began ranting at me as well, claiming I would go to hell for abandoning her and referring to me as a dirty lesbian who would also go to hell. For perspective, I am bisexual, and I made the mistake of informing my parents. Surprisingly, my father was fine with it, but my mother was furious, claiming I was destined and even forbidding me to be bisexual. She introduced me to her church friends' daughters, which made them uneasy. The strange thing is, when I told my brother, he just remarked, "So, you give me a nephew? Let's stay cool." My brother then began demanding them to leave and pay for the damage they had done to the house, or we would file a complaint. My mother laughed, stating that I wouldn't have the bravery to report my own mother. I replied, "What I have most is courage, and I would have the satisfaction of seeing you arrested again." She made excuses, claiming we didn't have proof, but my brother shut her down, pointing out that we had fingerprints, video evidence, and even footage from security cameras. It took her a long time to accept defeat, but they eventually left. But my brother wanted to add one more jab. As my mother entered the car, Kirby exclaimed, "Hey, I wish you could have died in my father's place." In response, she flashed him the middle finger and screamed as she climbed into the car, making my brother laugh, a triumph laugh, as if he had just won a long round of his favorite video game. Soon later, our sister called to say our mother had informed her she had been assaulted by Kirby and needed to bring me home to fix me. My sister, on the other hand, expressed her pride in me for standing up to them and joked that Kirby should have broken the cane over their heads. Now I'm living with my brother, as I've always desired, and it's been amazing. He's determined to acquire custody of me and has threatened our parents to give it to him in any manner. My mother is resolute, stating that she will not leave me with an abuser. She presumably thinks I am bisexual because my brother molested me. How crazy is that? I believe it is only a matter of waiting for her to succumb. For the time being, everything appears to be proceeding as planned. I had a passionate talk with my brother before he fell asleep. He was thinking about what life might be like if his father was still living. I informed him that his life could have been a little better. But he said, maybe. Maybe not. If he hadn't died, I might not have experienced the aggression, but I wouldn't have my two angels in my life. Then he kissed my forehead. I must confess, that was very lovely. I hugged him. I adore him, and I am confident that we will always defend each other. Thank you to everyone who has supported me. I hope nobody has to go through what we did. For those who feel our narrative is untrue, I wish it were. I wanted us to be a good family that accepts and protects one another regardless of the circumstances. However, this can only occur in my dreams. See you folks, maybe I'll update with the outcome of the procedure, so see you then. Update 2. Hello everyone, thank you very much for your support. Believe me, I am fine, and my brother is better, but fine is insufficient for him. He wants my custody at any means and is pursuing my parents with everything he has. Well, I wouldn't be here just to say we're fine, so let's get to the point. We were enjoying a peaceful afternoon when there was a knock on the door, which had already been repaired by a friend of Kirby's grandfather. I went to answer it, but was astonished to see my father present. I immediately sent him away, but he said that he simply wanted to communicate and didn't want to make a fuss. I told him to **** off and that we would only communicate in court. However, my father insisted and Kirby's grandparents threatened to contact the police. To our amazement, Kirby said to let him in. We questioned him, but Kirby simply stated that my father was a pushy moron who would not go easily, so it was best to allow him in and get it over with. So we let him in, but we were prepared in case he became aggressive. Kirby sat at the kitchen table and we all remained in the kitchen for protection. Kirby's grandmother was recording the conversation to provide additional evidence that my father was violating the provisional measure. The conversation went as follows. Kirby responded, "Very brave of you to come back here after all you've done, My dad. I'm sorry, I swear I'll pay for all the damage. Kirby. Pay? Of course you believe you can solve anything with money, correct? But I am not talking about tangible stuff, which are replaceable. What you accomplished for me was priceless. Father, I know, I apologize. I promise I will give my life to travel back in time. I'd do everything differently. Kirby. Yeah, but you can't travel back in time. The damage is already done. You devastated me. You destroyed your family. Father, but there was an accident. If you had told us from the start, things may have been different. Kirby says, more lies. You did not want to listen to me. Do you understand what you did to me? You made me feel unworthy of living. You've made me want to die. Do you have any concept of how that feels? No, because you are the aggressor, and the aggressor will never feel the victim's terror. Son of a B**********. Kirby began to cry at that point, but it was a cry of wrath and bitterness that he had suppressed for many years. My father continued to apologize in vain, but my brother claimed that his sole motivation was to feel better about himself, not to sincerely regret what he had done. However, my father continued to apologize. To the point where my brother issued his ultimatum, despite the fact that he was on the verge of another anxiety attack. Kirby asks, do you want forgiveness? Here's what we plan to do. You are going to grant me custody of my brother. You'll pay his child support, and you'll never try to get close to me, him, or anybody else again. Or else I will make your days a miserable hell. My father agreed immediately. I'll tell you, I don't feel sorry for him, but I've never seen him so defeated as he was at that point. I believe the shock of his deeds finally hit him hard, but I feel no sympathy for him. He deserves it. He deserves to feel the pain he has caused our family. He left shortly after, stating he was going to try to persuade my mother to relinquish custody of me. He too appealed for forgiveness, but I simply ignored him. My brother burst into tears the moment he went out the door. I believe his courage had gone at that point. He began crying and collapsed to his knees on the floor, hyperventilating and sweating cold. We escorted him into his room so he could lie down. We offered him anxiety medication, but it didn't seem to help. I contacted my sister and explained all that had transpired. She arrived instantly, and we all remained in the room, attempting to calm him down. My sister repeatedly told my brother that he was one of the bravest persons she knew. Despite his anxiety, he was brave enough to remain in the same room with our father, his abuser, and, as he called it, his murderer. After several hours, my brother finally calmed down and fell asleep. Lucy and I slept in his room just in case he had nightmares afterwards. But of course, nothing can end like that. My mother called us many hours later, inquiring what that demon Kirby had done to her husband. She accused my brother of having captivated her sweet hubby, and claimed he now wanted to give everything to Kirby. My sister simply ordered her to off, noting that at least one of them had come to their senses. So I hope everything works out and my mother finally comes to her senses and does the right thing. Thank you so much for everyone's support, especially Steve, who owns this account and has always been there for me since I first told my tale. While I'm gone, I'll give updates if anything changes. See you later. If you're asking why I use phony identities, it's to preserve my brother's privacy. I do not want their life to be invaded. Update 3. Hello everyone, it's been a while. You deserve the most recent update and I can say I'm overjoyed that it's finally finished. It's truly over, I'm free of that place and those people. In my last report, I said that my mother did not want to give up custody of me. My father threatened her in every way imaginable, but she did not care. She stated that she would never abandon me and would go to any length to reclaim my trust. So since she wouldn't give in, we turned to psychological pressure. We told everyone in our family what had transpired and how my brother wanted custody of me. The relatives knew, and they attacked my mother directly, claiming that it was the least she and my father could do to make amends for the past. However, my mother barred all of our relatives, claiming that my brother had charmed them. Typical. A week after I moved in with Kirby, she called. Karen stated, "I'll give you 2 options. You're going to come home without complaining and we'll forget all this, or you're going to stay there and suffer the consequences." I refused to succumb to her demands. I informed her that even if my brother died, he would not return to that house. So she hung up with me. I called to inform Kirby because I was concerned that she would do something damaging to him. He assured me not to worry, and that if anything happened he'd notify me. Then it occurred. The police knocked on our neighbor's door, an older lady who is quite nice. The police were summoned in response to an alleged accusation of child abuse at our residence. However, when they learned they were in the incorrect residence, they hurriedly left. I pulled things together. My mother had phoned the cops. But she's gone so far that she misplaced our address, directing the police to the wrong residence. Hours later, my mother called to suggest she could withdraw the complaint provided I went home without a fuss. Of course, I told her to go to hell and hung up. My brother apologized to the neighbor for what transpired. Then he decided that since my mother wanted to play dirty, we should play dirty too. We utilized our final weapon, our maternal grandma, the person my mother despises more than my brother. It was tough to get her contact information since, sadly, our grandma despises me and my sister for reasons we cannot control. It was tough to get her contact information since, sadly, our grandma despises me and my sister just because we are our father's children. Yes, she is the traditional grandma who has a favorite grandson, in our case Kirby, which provided us an unfair advantage. We eventually discovered her after searching for her phone number or address. So my brother called her and told her about everything, from the assault to our current situation. When asked if she could help my brother, Grandma's sole response was that she would be here as quickly as possible. And believe me, she arrived in our city an hour and 30 minutes later, which was okay because my brother had simply asked her to call my mother. And she agreed to the bargain and went straight to my parents' place for a surprise visit, which my mother absolutely despises. She called me and Lucy and asked if my brother had anything to do with it, which we disregarded. Her reaction was even enjoyable. Our grandma was purposefully driving our parents insane, and they couldn't fight back because, as I know, my mother is greedy, and my grandmother owns a large plot of property that, if sold, could provide for someone for a long time. That's true, my parents are not only fools and psychopaths, but also greedy. I believe my brother must have married into the wrong family since it is simply inconceivable. And after 2 weeks of misery for our parents, my mother finally asks when she'll leave. She stated that she would only go if my mother relinquished custody of me, with which my mother disagreed. She wanted our grandmother to depart, so she played the final card. Either my mother would relinquish custody of me, or she was entirely out of will, son and money. Guess which one won? So we went to court, and if looks could kill, my parents would have already been buried. The judge became agitated as he recounted the events of the past, wondering how my parents escaped justice so easily. Unfortunately, in today's world, money is more valuable than a person's sins. My father even hid his face, but my mother was there, unconcerned, convinced that she had done nothing wrong. I believe the most stressful moment was when Kirby and my mother confronted each other. Believe me, if you were there and seen the stares they gave each other, it was scary. I sometimes forget that these two once lived together. My mother may appear regular and friendly, but she is deceptive and manipulative. If you do or say something she disagrees with, you are perceived as a threat and heavily reprimanded for it. My brother, on the other hand, is so open-minded that it nearly scares me. He can make friends with just about anyone. If you see a young man with a cane and smiling and waving, it's probably my brother. So why can't I grasp how these two contradicting beings share the same body? Returning to the process, it was both complicated and speedy. After all, my parents were unwilling to fight for me, so our lawyer reached an agreement in which I would live with my brother and my parents would be required to pay a very significant alimony. My mother questioned why they had to pay child support since I was now my brother's responsibility, but my father and grandmother advised her to shut up and accept the deal. We eventually obtained it after a long and stressful process. Now I can live with my brother and they will have no control over me. I erased my parents' contact information exactly 30 minutes after receiving the results. I don't need it anymore. They will now become a part of the past that I would like to forget. But wait. There's more. Our granny had an epiphany before she went. My mother had never been mentioned in the will. Our grandmother took her away soon after she married my father. It was even funnier. She essentially swapped it for something she'll never have. My brother is the only person mentioned in her will, which is fantastic in my opinion. Our brother Kirby got all he wanted and deserved. I'm not sure if I call it divine justice or whatever, but he deserved it, and we couldn't be happier about it. I'd like to thank everyone on Reddit and the owner of this account. I'm glad you helped and guided me during this difficult time in my life. And now there's a happy ending. Even more personally, I hope I won't have to return here until absolutely necessary.